And it all goes back to Shaylin. It's the same problem I had in that conversation with Shaylin. It's the same. It's still the doll review. Again, you're like the damage you're doing to your own career and your own profession and the discipline as a whole, unless you just want to be a streamer, is incredible to me. I can't believe that you're going to sit here.
And then when they were talking about somebody did a crime.
I understand
from my perspective.
Yes.
Okay, so let me finish. Okay.
But this is why I'm horrified by you.
Now it might be worse than.
I agree.
But then you're wrong. But you guys can discuss that. You're insane if you think that. What actually happened?
You do reviews.
Oh
you literally do streams where you do reviews. Where people get.
The fact that you have to go through so much effort to prove, because the facts, when we do a review, we're arguing over the fact of what happened. That's where the investigation is. There is no argument over the fact of what happened with Reckful and Dr. K. Everybody can see the facts.
I'm willing to believe you when you say that you didn't lie, but that means that you have created an image of me, probably Dr. K, and what I believe, and then you told people that.
Okay, what do you want to...
I'll end by saying, this is just like where I'm feeling. I'm really disappointed in Max. I think I thought you were one way based on your art, because I was like a huge, huge fan of your art. I think I've realized you're not that at all. Maybe it changed, I don't know. And that makes me sad. Okie dokie.
Okie dokie. Hello.
Hello.
Well,
Hi guys.
well.
Where do we? Yeah, here we are.
The meeting of the minds. The Titans. In the top right corner, we have Mr. Madman Max, the philosophy slayer, or I'm sorry, the psychology slayer and philosophy slayer. In the bottom, we have potentially his next victim, not so erudite. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves and what brings us together here today?
I don't want to introduce myself, but you can, if you'd like.
I feel like that introduction was sufficient. Potential next victim of MrGirl, Erudite. I'm down for that.
Okay, well. Am I supposed to like tell you guys what to do, or I'm just kind of here to
Aren't you a mod?
Well, yeah, but like that's like if you guys get out of control. I mean, I guess I can be more active if you need that kind of guidance. That's fine. Max,
I think you should be active because I'm pretty.
I will be.
You're a mod.
I am active. I am active. I'm actively telling you guys to stop talking now. I'm active. Okay. Max.
Yeah.
Seems to be the case that in the past you have expressed some concern, to put it lightly, over how Erudite conducts herself, her conversations, maybe even her future practice. Why don't you elucidate some of those concerns, and then she can respond. Go ahead.
I realized I have the same problem with you, Stephen, that I have with Erudite. Are we going by first names or stage names?
You can call me Kyla or whatever.
Okay. I have the same problem I have with Kyla, which is the same problem I have with Dr. K.
And we're all in the same.
Yeah,
wait, so me, Destiny, and Dr. K, or me and Destiny, you have an issue?
Hold on, if we're using first names, I'm Steven, okay? Right. So, yeah, me, Steven, and I don't know what Dr. K's first name is, but okay, go ahead, Max.
Right. Yes, so I'm angry at all of you for the same thing. I realize there's a common thread here of this kind of protected, wanting to have it both ways, but not really being willing to take a solid stance of where you are. So with you, Stephen, it's where I stand with you. With Kyla, it's where Dr. K stands with you, and with Dr. K, it's where Byron stood with him. Now, as a doctor, there is a ethical requirement that it's not just like interpersonally frustrating. It's a actual professional requirement that people's lives depend on, that the patient knows if they're your patient, and they know when and how that relationship begins and ends. And it is a bedrock ethical principle of therapy and psychiatry. And so my problem with you, Kyla, was, in our conversation, I think we had a 4-hour conversation of me screaming at you about therapy ethics and you saying that the most infuriating things possible. But part of what was so infuriating about it is that you wouldn't, it just felt like you're trying to have it both ways. You're saying like, yeah, he kind of blah, 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 but on the other hand, blah, blah, and like, I think there's more nuance. It just felt really evasive. And like this is just such a clear cut case that you really need to take a stance on it. And I also, I don't think I would have been as mad if you had clearly just said, oh, I think everything Dr. K is doing is okay and good and blah, 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 and that's fine. I don't think this breaches ethics. And then we could have like a conversation about ethics, but it felt like you're saying, well, it's unethical, but it's not immoral. And that just seems like such a destructive message to send. That the idea that you are telling, because a lot of people who are afraid to go to therapy because they think their therapist doesn't actually care. They think that you're paying someone to pretend to care about you, to pretend to help you, but who's basically just going to let you run out the clock while they take your money. And it seems like it's so antithetical to what I'm trying to communicate about therapy. And then, and then Stephen, I feel like you did this. I feel like you fucked me. You fucked me in our last conversation, and you've been fucking me since then, where you won't. You get the loyalty and warmth from me of being like friends or friendly colleagues or whatever we are. But I don't really know what we are. That's part of the problem. Okay. But then you also get to kind of throw me under the bus and call me abusive. But then you also get to do it in a way that makes it sound like you're not really doing it. And then you get to start this rumor about me about how I don't let my girlfriend have a phone, but you do it just by asking a question. You're just asking questions. You didn't say it. You didn't start it, but you just think there's like a 80% chance it's not, or 20% chance it's true, or 30%. It just feels like nobody is putting their fucking foot down and saying where anything is or what anything is, how they feel about anything. And it all goes back to fucking Shaylin. It's the same problem I had in that conversation with Shaylin. It's the same. It's still the doll review. It's all still the doll review. It's still me asking Shaylin like, will you be my doll or not? And like just come up with an answer. And it's like every which way I look, somebody's like kind of pulling the rug out from underneath me. And they're like, well, no, I'm not doing that. So I feel like, anyway, back to Kyla, I feel like that happened in our conversation as part of what drove me so fucking insane about it, is I just didn't feel like you didn't seem to have like a cohesive stance.
Wow. Well, how do you feel about that, Kyrie? Kyrie? How do you pronounce your name again?
Just whatever your dad calls me.
Okay, bitch. How do you feel about that?
Sorry. I don't think I'm evasive at all. I think something like, so for example, in our conversation, we started with what is therapy? And you wanted it to be really clearly defined. And I said, basically, definitions are arbitrary. Probably what is therapy includes some sort of contract, which is typically the case in most therapeutic relationships, that there's a contract established and signed by both parties. But the idea that definitions in and of themselves aren't somewhat arbitrary and therefore also complex and nuanced, I'm not really sure what to do with this, right? I wasn't evasive at all. I clearly stated my position. The problem is that my position was inherently nuanced, because ethical dilemmas are always going to be this weird push and pull where you have to pick which ethical things you value more. This is why when you get trained in psychological ethics, we have to go through tons of these examples and different situations that are like, there's a ton of ethics that are kind of like at odds with one another.
I'm going to amend statements if I think you guys mean a thing, just so that we don't get bogged down in dumb things. So real quick, you said that ethical dilemmas are always going to be complicated. That's not necessarily true. Ethical dilemmas can be really complicated, but we would always agree that there are probably some pretty easy, like if you have a 50-year-old male therapist and a 12-year-old female patient and he starts fucking her because she's hot, that's always going to be bad, right? So just to amend that last statement, they can be really complicated. They're not always really complicated, but okay, I don't know, just to make sure you guys know.
Sure. I think, and so in Dr. K's case, I think it was extremely complicated. Right, born on the foundation that we couldn't get into of what is therapy, right? We didn't even really want to go there. And so I think
that's not relevant.
It's absolutely relevant. What is therapy matters because he's not beholden to certain ethics if it's not a client at all.
It has that, but that doesn't, that's not,
Well, here, let's ask this, Max. What is
the-
your central complaint about Dr. K? Does it involve what therapy is?
Reckful did not know if he was Dr. K's patient or not.
So it seems like it's
Dr.
important to define what therapy is, right?
No, it doesn't matter. If you are
Patient
allowing
implies
you
somebody
can't,
getting therapy, right? Isn't it?
yes, but the reason it doesn't matter is because there's an ethical breach if you allow someone to believe they are your patient. And even if through some like nitpicky definition, you manage to argue that he was never his patient, the fact is that he thought he was, and a lot of people watching thought he was. So it's still an ethical breach.
Well, so don't we need to kind of get into like, well, what is therapy? What would lead somebody to believing it's therapy? Don't we need to get into that?
I don't think so. I mean, are you going to claim, Kyla, that you don't know why Reckful thought he was Dr. K's patient?
I'm not going to claim that. What I'm going to say is that according to Dr. K and within some of the ethical guidelines, a disclaimer that this is not therapy and I'm not your therapist might be sufficient to not make it therapy. Now, I'd agree with you that at times it probably is insufficient, but I don't think, are you willing to go into like when these times are and are not? Because every time Byron brought up it being therapy, every single time Dr. K corrected it, right? And so you argued, I believe, that as a result, he should have just fully terminated the relationship, right?
Yes. I think that if the person you are talking to about their childhood trauma on 6 separate occasions says repeatedly that they are your patient and that you are doing therapy with them, continually making disclaimers, the fact that you have to make more than one disclaimer shows that your disclaimer is not working, and this person still in fact believes that they are in a therapeutic relationship with you. And whether or not that is technically true, and I 100% believe it was a therapeutic relationship, and it is true.
But a therapeutic relationship isn't therapy necessarily.
I don't think that makes sense or means anything. But even if it wasn't technically, even if you can find some way to spin this so that it wasn't a therapy relationship, it doesn't matter. I think that you are ethically bound to terminate the conversations about somebody's childhood trauma if if your job is to establish that you're not in a therapeutic relationship with somebody, then you have to stop doing therapy with them or doing something that they think is therapy with them. Like it's very cut and dry. You can't do that.
Okay. So I guess my question would be then, like, can practitioners at all have intimate, close relationships where they talk about in-depth details of people's, and they have a friend who talks to them about their childhood traumas?
Yeah.
How do they do that?
How do they have friends? I have friends.
How does it not branch into? Yeah, how do you not do that though? How do you not be a therapist if you're talking to your friend? You are a therapist, you're licensed as a therapist, you're fully registered, and you're talking to your friend about childhood trauma and the impacts on it, and your conversations are helping them.
Okay, well, let's evaluate. This just seems kind of inherently obvious to me, but if you want to go through the hallmarks of a friendship versus a therapeutic relationship, let's see. They would have to have a relationship beyond the context of discussing the mental illness of one of the parties of the relationship. So this is going to be a pretty easy slam dunk for me, because every single conversation we've ever seen Dr. K have with Byron is actually labeled talking about depression with Reckful. And then for the entirety of the conversation from start to finish, and I'm guessing you don't have many friendships like this, they talk only about Byron's depression from the beginning of the conversation to the end. And throughout the conversation, Dr. K is asserting his knowledge and his expertise, and he several times, or constantly, is making it clear that the purpose of the conversation is actually to help Byron with his depression. Now, in a friendship, so I have friends who we play Smash together. So we get on the call and Discord and we play Smash. We're talking about like Mario and Banjo-Kazooie, and we're talking about the Batman and if it's a good movie, and then sometimes one of us will say, I had a really bad week, or I'm having some problems in my relationship or with my friendship or with my family, and we'll talk about that. But even if that person is a therapist, that we're not doing therapy, because it's even though the conversation at times you can say to somebody like, oh, I'm mad at you, and or like, oh, I'm listening to you, or I care about you, blah, blah, blah. You can have exchanges that could fit into a therapeutic conversation, but to enter this conversation saying that you, again, that you're like the damage you're doing to your own career and your own profession and the discipline as a whole, unless you just want to be a streamer, is incredible to me. I can't believe that you're going to sit here and start out with this ridiculous, I hope, straw man where you're implying that you can't tell the difference between therapy and two friends talking.
Okay, hold on. Let's bring the temperature down a sec.
Okay.
Don't need any accusations of bad faith. Not here, okay?
But the good faith accusation is worse.
No, well, okay,
if you said that in good faith, it is worse than if you said it in bad faith.
Well, no.
It is better if you're a liar than if you are like this clueless.
No. The problem is that you've asserted something. It seems like without explicit justification. So she's probably asking for what your justification is to continue the conversation, because she's not just going to assume why you think something is wrong or bad. She's going to ask you. Now you've given a pretty clear answer, right? That a relationship where you meet somebody for the sole purpose of discussing a mental illness or a mental problem is going to be a lot different than giving advice to a friend that you have an outside relationship with, right? So that's what he's provided, Erudite.
Right. The issue is that they also talked off stream. We don't know what they talked about. We also know that they talked about games. They talked about outlook on the world. They talked about ontology. They talked about Dr. K's dad and all that stuff with Dr. K's dad.
All of this was in the context of bringing it back to talking about Byron.
Sure.
The game they talked about in the first session is Byron's game that he's making, and then he makes Byron cry by telling him he's making the game to rescue his 5-year-old self, because he has this scar that is his dharma, and he has to heal from this scar if he wants to stop being depressed.
They talked about like WoW and stuff like that too. Like it didn't always go back. Like sometimes it just talked about interest.
No, not really. No, they talked about WoW as like a 5-second introduction to how Dr. K knew who Byron was already.
I mean,
he does that with every streamer he talks to. He starts out saying, "Oh, I was a fan of yours back in blah. Here's this game you used to play that I used to play anyway."
Sure. Would it have been okay if Dr. K decided that he was a mentor?
I am a psychiatrist. I'm a doctor, and I'm going to mentor you. And in the mentorship, we're going to talk about how to treat your depression. We're going to talk about...
Mentorships are usually one-sided for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to have a one-sided relationship where I'm going to treat your depression as your mentor, not as your doctor. We're going to talk about what medications you've taken and haven't taken and why. We're going to talk about your diagnoses you've received from other doctors, and I'm going to disagree with those diagnoses and actually provide you with a new diagnosis.
Doesn't provide a new diagnosis, but yeah.
He told him he had borderline.
Said, I'm not diagnosing you with borderline, but this is something that's effective in treating this, which obviously mental health is a spectrum. You can have something like a treatment to borderline be helpful to somebody who isn't diagnosed with borderline. Okay,
I don't think you have pneumonia. You just seem like you might. I think it's relevant. And the treatment for pneumonia is antibiotics, and I'm going to prescribe you a bottle of them right now. Not because I think you have pneumonia, though, but you should take these. I would say that's much like the therapy, that is a diagnosis. It's just an unethical diagnosis.
Do you think, can I provide a counterpoint to that? Just curious, to test that, because I agree with what you just said. That would sound fucked up, right? Like, I'm not saying you have cancer, but here's a chemotherapy pill that I prescribe sometimes. Let me try that, right? Something that I've said oftentimes is somebody might say like, oh, like, I have a lot of trouble dealing with like a feeling that I get whenever I go to work. And I might say something like, oh, like I had a friend and she had like OCPD, and in dialectic behavior therapy, here's like a skill that they give us. Maybe you can try that. Do you think that that would be an okay suggestion for me to make, or do you think that that's like overstepping the boundaries? Let's say I was a psychiatrist or whatever. That I'm not diagnosing them, but I'm saying...
Absolutely, it's inappropriate. I think that mentioning a diagnosis as a psychiatrist when talking to a patient, the patient is going to assume that you're diagnosing them. And we know that Byron assumed he was diagnosing him because he tweeted out like a week later, I just got diagnosed with borderline. And Dr. K said, he said the way to cure borderline is to have somebody love you for 2 years and not abandon you. So
I will be that person.
I will be that person for you. And the word
I
so,
agreed on you was really unethical. Right?
I'm not saying it's unethical. I'm saying it's a diagnosis. The word so in that context means I've made the disclaimer, just like, I mean, like, again, like you can reach your hand down somebody's pants and say, I'm not molesting you. But if you, it doesn't, saying you're not doing what you're doing doesn't mean you're not doing it. And when you're a doctor, all it does is slap on another ethics violation.
So the issue is, do you think that pneumonia is very similar to like diagnosis protocol or whatever to borderline? Like, do you view borderline as an illness with biomarkers or anything like that?
I don't really believe in psychological diagnoses or mental illnesses other than a statistical definition of behavior.
Right. You'd say it all like occurs within like the spectrum of like human expression experience. Am I understanding?
Absolutely. But a mental illness is when a clinician says, I'm taking your statistics and I'm saying that you've crossed the line. Yeah, everybody's anorexic to some degree. Everybody's bipolar or borderline to some degree. It's just you've hit the threshold for borderline. And so I think he was clearly telling Byron that he has met the conditions for borderline. I don't think he was saying I'm not diagnosing you because he didn't think that Byron was borderline. I think he said that because he was trying to protect himself from this.
Right. So I agree with kind of the way that you characterize mental illness is that it broadly is mostly a statistical norm. Like things are bad enough that now we call it a diagnosis, but people can be suffering all along the spectrum and have certain symptoms along the spectrum that aren't necessarily like you have borderline, correct? Like you can be a little bit like overly attached and emotionally volatile, but not necessarily be borderline.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
probably
I think, to be clear here, I think Max, what Max saying is he goes a step farther and he said like there is no such thing as borderline. There's just a huge spectrum of human experience, and once you hit some arbitrary threshold, psychologists call it borderline. But in reality, these are all just where people fall on the spectrum.
Okay, right. So the difference between that and pneumonia is that when you have pneumonia, there's very distinctive biomarkers. It's much more biologically traceable. It's kind of like a yes or no situation, right? So when you give somebody a prescription for pneumonia, you say, but you don't have pneumonia, but wink, wink, nod, nod. It's very different than saying like, well, this is this term, borderline. That means a collection of things.
Yes, but
you might not be borderline, but this still would be helpful.
The analogy I was making is not to say that borderline exists in the same way that pneumonia does. My analogy was when you tell someone, I'm not diagnosing you with this thing, but here's the treatment for this thing, and now we're going to do the treatment for this thing. You are going to make the patient think that you are diagnosing them with that thing. And we have proof that he did make Byron think that he was diagnosing him with borderline. And we also have the context of him saying, I'm not doing therapy with you, wink, wink, and Byron actively winking back and literally saying, right, not therapy, in this kind of sarcastic tone to establish that you telling me that this is not therapy is not, that doesn't mean anything to me. I think it's therapy, and I think you think it's therapy, and we're just doing it in public, and we're saying we don't think it's therapy for liability reasons. Byron was trying to cede his own protection under the law over and say, and into ethics, to say, I don't need to be protected from you so that we can do this. Give me the experimental drug, shoot it in my veins, give me the Dr. K, basically. But clearly he thought he was being diagnosed, and clearly Dr. K was winkingly diagnosing him.
I wouldn't say that he was clearly winkingly diagnosing it, but I don't think Dr. K maybe was sufficient in clarifying that it absolutely wasn't a diagnosis, because I'm sure you would agree, somebody who's diagnosed with anxiety, if you're along that spectrum of anxiety, the same treatment that would help somebody at this point is also likely going to help this person at this point, right? Anxiety is big about like confronting, exposing yourselves to things that you're afraid, right? And so I would agree that Dr. K could have been more clear in certain distinctions. But I agreed with you in our first conversation on these things. I think there are ethics that he's violated. I think he did muddy the water. But to say that Byron he did diagnose...
Do you think Byron was borderline?
I have no idea. I never talked to him.
Are you a Trump supporter?
No, I'm not a Trump
Do you
supporter.
think Trump? Have you ever talked about Trump having any mental illness?
No, I have
privately?
not.
So you feel that you need to talk to somebody in order to have an opinion on whether they're mentally ill?
Yes, ideally. So at a professional level, yes.
I'm not talking about a professional level. I'm saying just personally.
So
I'm not
you
asking
and
to make
Destiny could.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You guys could speculate all day long.
Okay.
When professionals come out and say it, it's different. I get that that's where you're going, and which is why I said Dr. K
No,
could
no,
have
that's
made
not.
it
That's
more
not.
clear.
That's not where I'm going. I'm saying I actually want to know, and it's fine if you can't answer the question because you think it would violate ethics. That's fine. That's different from you need
Yeah, I
to.
can, it's like a clear APA ethic violation. Like you cannot publicly, as a practitioner,
Yes,
comment
that's fine.
on
But that's
random
saying
people's
I'm not going
diagnoses.
to answer that is different from I know even if somebody like puts their whole family in a blender and then drinks it, I can't say that that person's mentally ill because I haven't talked to them. Like I get that you can't say it publicly, but you're saying you don't have an opinion.
So what are you
I want to be
asking me
clear
to
real
do here?
quick too, because you changed that a little bit to, do you think Reckful is borderline, to do you think he has a mental illness, for that analogy, just to say that was a little bit different, but
Right. So I would say mental
sure,
illness, but I wouldn't say borderline.
I'm not asking you I'm not asking you to say it. I'm pointing out that we because you don't want to answer the question, we can't go down this like
well, here, real quick, let's try to
line of thought.
reformat. What is the question exactly that you're asking? Are you just trying to see if she's willing to say that he has any mental illness at all?
No,
or
I'm not,
is she-
yeah, I'm not. No, I'm not trying to entrap you. I'm actually curious if you think he was borderline, and then because if you do, then, if you think he clearly seemed borderline, or it's reasonable to diagnose him as borderline, then it just seems weird for you to say Dr. K wasn't diagnosing him if you agree with the diagnosis, or at least don't disagree with the diagnosis. But I get that you don't want to comment on that, so that's fine. Let's just drop it.
Well, I don't think that right now, I don't think the issue is that she doesn't feel comfortable commenting on it because it's a professional thing. It sounds like she's just unclear what the question is, or I don't understand what the question is.
It's probably a bit of both. Like it's at first seems like, do you think Byron had borderline?
Yeah,
and my
the question
very
is-
clear answer is genuinely, I don't know. Because remember, I'm going to have a much more nuanced, complex view of what borderline is. And so like what somebody who's like maybe only worked and like been around borderline people versus maybe somebody who study it, it's going to be different, right? So I'm genuinely saying I'm not fully sure. Like I just don't know if I have enough information.
Okay.
Do you believe that answer, or do you think she's like couching it to try to save grace professionally or something?
Would it be better to say I don't have enough evidence to believe that he is borderline?
Okay, how about, wait, can I ask
No,
this?
you should
Erudite,
no because
or-
you're actually making the violation by saying that. If you want to follow the rules, you have to just say I can't comment on that.
Okay, wait, Carrie. Right? Carrie? Kari? How do you pronounce your fucking name?
Isla.
Kyla. Okay. Would you say right now, if you didn't want to say because you didn't feel like it was appropriate for you to speculate professionally, would you say that?
Sorry, can you restate that?
If the
It's
issue right now is that
happening.
you did,
It's happening.
what's happening?
That you're trying to have it both ways. You're saying I don't have enough information, but also I can't comment on that. But that is a comment on it.
No, it's not.
It is. It is. You're commenting
because
on.
I'm telling you
you're
why
saying,
I don't have a comment on it.
Because contrapositively, she could say, I do have enough information, but I won't make a public comment on it.
But
would
that
be a
is
perfectly
also
valid answer.
that's also a public comment on it. You're
No, it's
commenting.
not. That's not a...
It is okay.
No, no,
The reason it's a
ethical
violation.
violation is doing the diagnosis, not saying if there's enough information to have a diagnosis. Like if I were to ask a doctor, hey, let's say that I showed you a guy with like 52 different symptoms of cancer. Do you think you'd have enough information to say if he has cancer? The doctor might be like, yeah, I think I would. But that's a fundamentally different question than saying like, hey, here's all this stuff. Do you think he has cancer? And then
Okay,
them
yes,
saying
but
yes or no. Those are fundamentally different questions, even if they seem similar. Asking somebody
Yeah,
if they
but
have the
you're-
appropriate
you're-
information to
the
make a diagnosis is
problem
different than
is-
asking them to make a diagnosis. Yeah.
The problem is that you're taking somebody who has dumped a ton of information about themselves out in public and saying we all have the same pool of evidence, and looking at it, there isn't enough evidence to make a diagnosis. But that is still giving information about whether or not you think he is borderline. It's still you're still answering the question. You're still giving information about your.
I disagree, because she could say I've actually watched a ton of Byron stuff, and I think I would have enough information to make a diagnosis, but I wouldn't say that publicly because I'm a professional.
But she didn't. But she has watched. But she has already previously said in public that she has watched.
Max, I don't mean this in like a really inflammatory way, but I genuinely don't think you understand. I really don't think you do.
You don't think I understand what?
I don't think you understand that. I don't think you understand the ethics that are at play here, or maybe psych ethics at all. I'm not sure.
I think Kyla, I don't mean to say this in an inflammatory way, but I think that you don't understand the ethics at all either. And it's not that I think you might not understand them. I actually think you don't understand. In fact, I'm positive you don't understand them. And when I said it's happening, what I meant is that you're trying to have it both ways. You always want to have it both ways. Yes, no. I do. I think. Okay,
this is incorrect. I am both publicly
what I'm saying
not
is
going to violate this.
What I'm saying is correct.
I don't have enough evidence,
I think it is
even
correct.
if I was willing to violate the ethics. Right?
I understand.
Two comments I've made.
Wait, oh my God, hold on. I need you to hold on, because now this is going in a bad path. Not bad because you guys disagree with each other, hate each other, but bad because I think we're genuinely just not understanding the question. Okay, hold on, Max. I need you to make sure that we're on the same page here, and then you can drill her as much as you want, okay? Do you acknowledge there's a difference between saying, do you have enough information to make a diagnosis?
Yes.
Versus, will you diagnose one way or another? Yes, okay. So now what she's saying...
Both are inappropriate to answer.
False.
If you're following the rules, they're both inappropriate to answer.
False. The latter is the only one that is an ethical violation.
Actually, you're wrong.
No, the APA released a statement about this a couple of years ago during the Trump administration when people were doing this. You're allowed to speculate. You're allowed to talk about things. I don't have enough evidence, right? But you can't say Trump has X, whatever that would be.
You're allowed to speculate and talk about things.
Allowed to talk about symptomology.
You're allowed to talk about narcissistic personality disorder generally, but you are not allowed to attribute it to Trump.
Correct. You cannot diagnose people that you have never worked with.
Exactly. We both agree on that. The part we disagree about is that saying whether or not you have enough information to diagnose somebody still is...
No.
Oh.
That is incorrect. That is not an ethical violation.
Well, I'm convinced now. I am convinced.
I'm not really
if you interrupt me while I'm talking and say that I'm incorrect, I want to make it clear
you're wrong, and you're also besmirching me a little bit and basically saying that I would work outside of my ethics. That's why I'm being really firm about this. I genuinely don't think you understand ethics.
Okay, the premise of this conversation that you asked to have is that I think you are operating outside of your ethics, and I think you're wrong. And you think I'm wrong about thinking you're wrong. So the reason I keep making fun of you for saying you think I'm wrong is I already know you think I'm wrong, and you already know I think you're wrong. So we can just take all of that and just kind of set it aside, because that's the premise of the conversation, is that you think I'm wrong and I think you're wrong, and we're arguing about it. So every time I talk from now on, let's just assume that you think I'm wrong, and every time you talk, we'll assume I think you're wrong. And then you can let me know if you agree with something I say, and then we can save a lot of time.
All right. We could do that, but if you say things about my practice, my character, or that I'm violating ethics when you don't understand ethics, I am going to correct you on the ethics.
If you say things about my ethics by saying that I don't understand ethics and saying that your ethics are right, then I'm going to have to correct you, Kyla.
Okay, so hold on. Right now we have a disagreement on a fact of the matter, right? So Max is saying that if there was somebody that asked publicly, do you think there's enough information to know if this guy has a particular mental ailment? Do you think that, like, would there be enough for you to know that you saying, I think there's enough, but I'm not going to make a comment on it? So Kyla's saying that wouldn't be an ethics violation. Max is saying that would be an ethics violation. We have a disagreement of a matter of fact, unless somebody wants to like link an APA.
It's more of a matter of logic, and I would like to
No. It's not a matter of logic. There is no logic.
It is.
It
is a matter of logic.
Statement of fact of what is like the APA.
I believe it is a matter of my position officially in this debate that you're moderating is that it is a matter of logic, and I would like to explain this position whenever you see fit to give me the floor to do so.
Okay, you can do it, but this is going to come down to, I'm telling you, we can spend all the time you guys want on this, because I don't
want to spend a lot of time on this. I can explain my position pretty quickly.
Unless somebody's willing to link an APA statement or something that you guys are going to have disagreements in the logic here, but go for it if you want to try to do it.
Okay, So the problem with making that statement either way is, if you say, let's use Byron as the example. If you say that I do have enough information to make a diagnosis, but I'm not going to make one, you definitely don't have enough information to make a negative diagnosis if you haven't talked to him. Like somebody could have a mental illness that they cover up on stream. So if you say you have enough information to make a diagnosis or a non-diagnosis, all you're saying is that he's mentally ill, and you're effectively making the diagnosis by saying that. Unless you think that you have watched so many of Byron's streams that you can confidently say he has no mental illnesses, which is impossible and not true. However, if you are saying that, that's also against the reason the ethics code is there is because the APA doesn't want you going around cheapening the concept of diagnoses by throwing them at public figures because you don't have enough information. And it reduces overall public trust in therapy ethics and in diagnosis, like as a tool, which is, I guess, like at the heart of what we're arguing about. And then what
do you mean by a negative diagnosis?
Saying he does not have any mental illnesses. Or saying he does not have a specific mental illness. So if you're saying, I do have enough information to determine this, you're implying either you have enough information to diagnose him over a live stream, which cheapens the profession, or you're saying, I have enough information from watching his live streams to confidently say that he doesn't have a mental illness, which also cheapens the profession and cheapens diagnosis. So that's why you're not supposed to talk about it and why it doesn't make sense and is against the spirit of the rule and the ethics to make that statement. If you say, I don't have enough information, you're also causing a new problem where to another observer, a layperson who's thinking like, well, I'm not as bad as Byron is, so I guess that means that if you're saying that he's not mentally ill, or you don't have enough information to say he's mentally ill, I do a lot of the same stuff he does, and it starts to get people thinking and self-diagnosing and diagnosing each other in a way that you're just like not supposed to do or participate in.
So you believe, sorry, to understand, do you believe that just saying a mental illness would be a diagnosis, like the word mental illness?
No, but it would imply that you could make a diagnosis. It's not are you actually asking me if I think that mental illness?
I am trying to clarify your position, yes.
Yes, I am aware in the DSM there is no diagnosis called mental illness.
Right. Do you remember what I actually said? Do you
Yes.
I'm very ready to move on.
I bet.
But I don't think you're remembering what I said.
Okay. I remember what you said. You said two things. And this is why I'm mad at you and why I'm mad at Steven and why I'm mad at Shaylin.
Whoa, what? I didn't do anything?
You didn't do it now, but you do it.
You're going to do it later.
Done it. You've done it to me.
What
you
did
did
I do?
it last time we talked, where you want to have it both ways. You want to say, I don't have enough information, but also I can't comment on this. But that is a comment on it. I'm trying to explain that it's not an obvious comment on it. It's not a super egregious breaking of the rule, but it still breaks the rules.
First of all, I'm bound by no ethics. So I'm under a different guiding principle than Carrie, Kari, whatever the fuck. But we'll get into that later.
Okay.
So to be clear, the ethics is making the diagnosis publicly. You can make comments. You can't make public.
Okay.
I never violated the ethics.
Okay. Do you understand why I think it's ethical to make a comment about whether the trove of evidence of someone's mental illness is sufficient or not for you to make a diagnosis, even if you're withholding that diagnosis?
I didn't imply that. I distinctly implied the opposite of that.
I'll say it again. Do you understand why I think it is unethical to imply whether the trove of evidence you have is
sufficient? I do not understand.
Okay.
This is not in the APA ethics. I haven't been able to find it anywhere in any guidelines. So no, I do not.
Okay. I have explained it to the best of my abilities. And it's not a major sticking point, so we can move on if you want.
Are we all comfortable moving on?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Good job, guys. We're moving on from this topic.
Okay.
What would be the next grievance you'd like to air, MrGirl? Max.
Grievance? What? I've screamed at her for 4 hours about this, so I can just restate my. I guess it feels like we're having two conversations.
Wait, hold on. We're not having two conversations. We're just right now. We've just closed the door on that last one, where we seem undecided about whether or not there is an actual ethics violation. Now I'm asking you if there's a second. There is no two. Right now, there's no conversations happening.
I believe this whole exchange is two conversations. This whole debate is two conversations. There's one conversation about, did Dr. K clearly violate ethics guidelines? We've already had that conversation twice, Kyla.
Okay, I didn't think that was what this conversation was.
That's not what
I didn't think so either. And yet that's the thing we keep fucking talking about. So that's
no. Hold on. Wait. To be clear, we're not talking about that at all. That has nothing to do with this.
We talked about what is therapy versus what is a friendship. We talked about what is a diagnosis.
But all of this was to get to whether Kyla's comments were unethical. That's what the whole point of this conversation was. It has nothing to do with Dr. K. Like, that might be like a side thing, but that's not really what's at issue here.
Kyla
has no care in the world. This is my guess. Kyla, if Max said the worst things, blah 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 about Dr. K, do you give a fuck?
No, I
understand. That's not the.
I disagree, but it doesn't matter.
Okay, the two conversations I think we're having is one is about therapy ethics, and yes, Dr. K's therapy ethics as they relate to Kyla's, because our disagreement about that has created a disagreement about our Kyla's therapy ethics and my understanding of ethics. And then the other conversation is what do we do, or how do we handle it? And I think or how does Kyla feel about the way I handle thinking that she has bad therapy ethics? So if we're only talking about one, that's fine, but it feels like there's another component of you feeling like I threw you under the bus, or that I'm not handling this charitably. Like there's a way I could disagree with you, probably, where you wouldn't feel the need to like confront me and have a moderated discussion about it if I was just like, wow, that's really not what I learned in college, and so I just have a completely different understanding from you. But I guess to each their own. Instead, I was like, you're a fucking menace.
Yeah, my take on this conversation is that I don't think the conversation is about Dr. K. It's not even really about Kyla's comments about Dr. K.
Kyla.
Kyla's I got it right. Okay, Kyla's comments about Dr. K. I think the issue that she has is that you are making hardcore, almost personal / professional attacks on her credibility, and I think that's what she's trying to resolve here.
Absolutely, but I think there's two conversations about that happening simultaneously. One is, is my criticism, does it have merit? Are you going to discredit me by saying that I'm wrong? Or are you going to say, well, you can disagree with me, but you're kind of being an asshole about it? I think
so again, the reason why I don't, I'm not going to ever be able to move you off this, because once you've made a decision, I don't think you can ever be moved no matter how much evidence is presented. This is what I'll say. I think that there's a world where
let's stop with the let's stop with the ad homs. Even subtle that is an ad hom. Stop. Admit that's an ad hom. We can stay on this road.
You've decided in your mind that this is literally.
I just think you're fucking wrong, Steven. I think you're wrong. I just think you're wrong.
That's fine.
So saying that I can't be moved off a position because I think you're wrong, don't you think that's a little arrogant?
There are three people.
I just disagree with you.
There are three people that are part of this conversation, and two of them disagree with one other about what the conversation is about. So, I mean, it's a strange position to be in. We can say that we agree to disagree.
No, you are the one that the other two people disagree with. I think Kyla agrees with me that there's two things at play here. One is, did I handle disagreeing with her appropriately and fairly? And the other is, am I wrong? And I think it's worth separating those two. I don't think she
cares about you. I think that she would be okay. She can respond afterwards. If you were saying something like, I think that I disagree with Kyla's analysis on Dr. K. I think that she's wrong about something she's saying. She'd probably be okay. But the clips that I saw were you saying that she's greedy, she only cares about money, she doesn't care about patients. I think that's the issue that she has, not that you disagree about your analysis of Dr. K. But
if that's the issue she has, then why aren't we talking about that? Why wouldn't if that's the real issue, wouldn't she want to start with, so listen, you're a smart guy. I respect your opinion. I disagree with it in this case. And I think it's inappropriate and unfair of you to be attacking me professionally, because I understand this is my profession. I understand you have a bachelor's in this topic and that it's very near and dear to your heart. You're very passionate about it. However, I don't think you're educated enough in this issue. And even if you were, you're being really vicious. you know? And like your words have an impact on me, and they have an impact potentially on my livelihood or my audience. Like there's a way to approach this so that it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. But so far what we're getting is Kyla is trying to discredit my attacks on her by saying that I am not informed enough, which is fine. And I believe that you believe that, Kyla, but I also think you believe, and we're not talking about this, that even if my attacks are founded, that I still should be making them or communicating them in a different way than I am.
So this isn't about you being mean. This is about you lying about what I said and characterizing my views so beyond incorrectly that all I can believe is either A, you're actively lying, you're lying, and that's a problem, which I don't think it is. Or it's B, you've engaged in so much self-deception about me or maybe psychology as a whole that you cannot engage with me well at all, and you cannot actually hear what I am saying to you. And I'm basing this on the 2 hour of hate rant specifically to give you context from where I'm pulling your statements from.
Okay, so let's change what my understanding of topic 2 is, the real topic, the secret topic. It's not that I'm mean, it's that I'm lying or wrong about what you even said. It's not that I'm not even.
You're lying about what I said. You're lying about what I said.
Okay, so far you have not mentioned that. So again, I'm trying to say that it feels like we're having two conversations at the same time. If you think I'm lying about and I'm not saying you should have mentioned it, I just want to point out, as Steven says, what's next on the docket. It seems like we should probably acknowledge that you're not just saying I have no understanding of what therapy ethics are and that I don't understand them.
I also think that I just don't care.
Yeah, I know.
I don't care enough to bring it
well,
up.
if you don't care, then we probably shouldn't have spent.
You brought this topic up originally.
Wait. We've already spent about 50 minutes talking about what I think about therapy ethics. So if you don't care about that, I think you should have mentioned that already. But again, it's the doll review. There's two conversations happening, and I just want to acknowledge that they're both happening. One is you think I'm lying about you, and one is you think I'm wrong about therapy ethics. And the one you clearly want to talk about more is the one where you think I'm lying about you. So why don't we talk about that instead of talking about therapy ethics? Because we already had the therapy ethics conversation.
But don't put all the responsibility on me, Mr. Girl. There's two of us distinctly in this conversation.
Absolutely.
And you can steer it any way you want to.
And
I allowed you to steer it in the direction you did, which is totally fine. I was willing to go in the Dr. K ethics because I was like, oh, I guess you still feel some sort of way about that.
I'm not trying to criticize you by saying that.
I want to be clear, though, that it's not like this is just like me having like this, me and Steven have this like secret underhanded thing, but we're really talking about how you're wrong.
No, I think you just have, no, I don't think you have a secret underhanded thing. I think you.
To be clear, just on my involvement in this, she messaged me and she said, hey, here's a whole bunch of clips where Max has said things. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I think I offered, I was like, do you want me to moderate a conversation between you two? Because sometimes I can play translator. And then I think I messaged Max. And I said, are you going to have a talk with her? And then I messaged her, are you going to set up a talk with her? Something like that. And then we made a group chat or whatever. I don't have there's no agenda here on my part. Well, there might be on Kyla's part, but I don't have an agenda. So.
It's just to address the 2 hours of hate where you lied about me. Yeah.
Okay.
Want to get into that?
Sure.
So you probably know, because I did DM you about this originally. So you probably have context of what I am feeling you lied. Do you want to outline? Do you want me to just outline why I think you're lying?
You go ahead. Whatever you prefer.
Sure.
I can outline it if you want, or you can.
I'll pose it as a question. I'll just repeat the last question in our messages to one another. So to be clear, you have decided that my beliefs, my rhetoric around psychology and psych ethics are not only perverse and harmful, but so much so that you are not even willing to stream with me again. Not based on what I've said and not based on what I say I believe, but based on what you now think I believe upon rumination. Is this correct?
That is, well, there's some implications in the premise there that I don't know what you said, or that I am
not based on what I have said, and not based on what I say I believe, but based on what you now think I believe.
Even things you've said in this conversation, I think, make you radioactive, dangerous in a therapy world. So yes, you have said and continued to say things that I think are incredibly dangerous and bad.
based on essentially, it seems like
And when
a ghost of me. Because in the 2 hours of hate, you made a lot of claims about what I believe
Okay,
that
well, we can
know
go
you know that I didn't believe those things.
you have no
you know
fucking
that.
idea what I know or think.
Then
I
if
could
you don't remember, it doesn't make you any less responsible for your
if you can't
statements.
make a diagnosis about Byron, you sure as fuck can't make one about me. Okay, you have no. I could be all kinds of delusional. You have no idea. I can. All I can tell you is I don't think I'm lying.
Do you remember what you said in the 2 hours of hate?
No, not really.
What do you think my belief is
I
around
remember I was
ethics,
shouting and I was seeing red. I remember that.
ethics and insurance? Do you remember what you said, or do you want me to read it to you?
I think you said that the purpose of ethics is to protect insurance providers.
Did I ever actually say that?
It's kind of a weird sentence, so I think I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's what you implied. I think you were talking about the difference between something being unethical and something being immoral. And I got really upset with you because you said that. And then you said that you think what Dr. K is doing is definitely unethical because it's probably against the rules, but you don't think it's immoral. And you said one of the differences is that the ethics are like rules to protect insurance providers.
No.
And I said that the ethics
No.
are there. I said that the ethics are there to protect the patient. And that
What I said, verbatim, from the transcript, ethics are about protecting the client, but there is also a necessary relationship between practitioners and insurance companies. For example, there are times where insurance companies will say, these actions are too extreme and we don't want to be on the hook. I said ethics are for both the practitioner and the client.
Yes, that's true.
Right.
I believe you.
But in your 2 hours of hate, you said that all I care about is insurance, money, greed, and that I am a...
Wait, I said all you care about is insurance, money, and greed?
That I think ethics is all about insurance, and all I care about is I'm selfish. I'm just concerned with protecting myself, that I don't care about my clients, and I'm concerned mostly with making money.
Do you have an exact quote?
Sure, I'll pull it up. To have somebody who's an addictions counselor sitting there saying they're just out to get your money, you know what the bad part is for us when you kill yourself is that it's expensive for us. Also, we don't get to do more sessions with you if you kill yourself. We can't charge you more week after week.
Okay. That is what I'm worried people hear when you carry water for somebody who I think is culpable in a death via their malpractice. I think that when you get in the way and defend this person, Dr. K, by muddying the waters about what, in my view, about what therapy ethics are for, especially the ethics of whether someone is your patient or not, I think you are
This isn't about what you think. This is about what you said I think. That's my whole issue.
Okay.
I don't mind people being mean. I don't care that you dislike me. I don't care that you dislike my practice or anything. I care about you lying about what I said.
Okay, let me finish. I understand that you did not literally say that. I hope, and maybe I didn't make this clear enough, I don't think anybody listening to that thinks that you literally said, the problem with when you kill yourself is that it's expensive for us. What I was saying is that I'm worried that that's what people hear. That's what people already think about therapists. And I am trying very hard to correct the record on that and protect the population and protect the field from Dr. K and now from you. So you know that I don't think that you literally think that, right? Like you know that's not what I'm saying. You're just saying it's an unfair characterization.
So, I would have liked to assume, giving you the benefit that you don't assume that. The problem is that you doubled down on most of your statements with that individual that you were talking to. You said, yes, clearly she was. Yes, yes. She rolled her eyes at the idea of ethics. She thinks ethics is just for mostly insurance purposes.
Yeah, I can see that that's unfair. I think that a more
Do you
accurate.
think here's a question I guess related to that. Would you ever, if she said that she was practicing somewhere, would you ever report her to an ethics board as a result of the statement she's made on a stream?
No.
Okay.
I think that I think bringing up the insurance companies in such a cut and dry case of someone being like destroyed for pure greed in front of so many people, I find it absolutely horrifying. So a more accurate and charitable read is that you think that the ethics rules are enough about insurance and money that you thought it was worth bringing up. And if I told you about a therapist who like raped a child, and then you said, well, that's against the ethics rules, I'm not sure if it's immoral. And those are separate, guys. And the ethics rules, we have to remember, are also about insurance. I would probably then go on, if somebody asked me about it, I would probably get really angry and say that you were defending child rape and that you're saying we can rape you if we want to. Send your kids to therapy and we'll rape them. And I don't think that would be like, it's hyperbolic, and I am still very angry at you. But it's not meant to be a literal expression of what you said. It's more me saying like, I think this is the message you are sending. And I think if I use the child rape example, you can see that wouldn't be that unfair.
So then the issue is that you're engaging in self-deception of me, because I didn't say those things, nor did I say that I believe those things.
In the child rape example, you wouldn't have said those things either. But you can see why.
I'm going back to what you actually said.
Okay, well, I would like to use this analogy for a second to get you to understand that if I did say, if a therapist said, well, it's just because you raped a child that's against the rules, it's against the law, it's not necessarily immoral, we don't know. It's nuanced. You can see how then I would then tear into that person and say this person is defending child rape. Like you understand that would be fair if I did that, even if it's not what the person said, right?
For the most part, to be honest with you, not as much, because your whole thing is like nuance and like understanding like complex things and like understanding human expression. So like I would say most people having that reaction, fair enough. Surprised to have it from you.
I mean, it's fair. It's fine if you are surprised. Maybe I have certain red lines that you don't know about, but a therapist raping a child is one of them. That crosses two red lines at the same time. So that's really bad, and that makes me really angry if somebody is going to get in the way of that. So do you concede that if somebody defended that in the same way you defended Dr. K, that for me to then lay into that person and say this person is basically a rape apologist, do you see how that would be a fair criticism even if they did not say, I apologize for rape?
I think you would have to engage in mass amounts of self-deception to come to that conclusion, but potentially yes.
Okay, so you think that I would be engaging in mass amounts of self-deception if somebody literally raped a child in the therapy session? So that would be
probably an unnuanced situation, right? I think pretty much everyone...
So let's just, I'm going to give you the analogy one more time, and I would like you to just respond to the analogy Okay, so I would like you to respond to this analogy, if you would.
Sure.
Somebody rapes a child in a therapy session. I am then talked to somebody else who is a counselor about this incident. And they say, well, it's probably unethical, but I'm not sure if it's immoral. The rules are somewhat there for insurance purposes. They're also to protect the children, but they're also for insurance purposes. Do you see how my takeaway from that conversation could be this person is a rape apologist. And then if I went and laid into that person, that would actually be a fair characterization of what they said, even though they didn't actually ever say I am a rape apologist.
Yeah, because most ethical violations are also immoral, but not all of them are.
Okay, and do you see how even mentioning the fact that the rule against raping children is an ethics rule, and ethics rules are not always immoral. Do you see how if somebody said that in public, they would be torpedoing their own mental health professional career? Because the implication is maybe raping children isn't so bad.
Sure. So in this hypothetical, yes, hypothetical doesn't map onto our situation.
That's what I would like to map it onto there for you so you can see why I'm reacting the way that I am. I think that what Dr. K did to Breckville is worse than rape.
Right. And that's where I would say that is an insane position to have, because
That's
most
fine.
ethical
That's
violations
fine.
that he has broken, that you have even outlined, are nuanced. And some of them are moral and some of them are not.
Hey, I get it. I know what you think, and you know what I think. But I want to make it clear to you why I think this analogy maps onto it and why I'm reacting the way I am. So
okay, so do you want to move to topic 2 then, where it's basically saying like you're wrong about ethics then?
No, I want you to just like marinate in this for a second.
So the issue is that your hypothetical isn't mapping on. Can I give you an alternative hypothetical?
No, I want
that I think maps on better, and then we can see how that goes.
Is it murder?
It's not murder.
Is it
jaywalking?
Rape? Well, see, jaywalking. Now you're comparing Dr. K dismantling a man's psyche and then the man killing himself a couple months later to jaywalking. And I gotta say, I'm having a pretty similar reaction to this conversation that I had to our first conversation.
So you feel that the equivocation would be murder or rape?
Somewhere in between murder or rape. I think it's worse than rape, but better than murder.
Okay. So can you understand that for probably pretty much everyone else in the field, situation we're actually talking about is more of like a jaywalking situation. And then when they were talking about somebody did a crime. Hold on, from my perspective.
Yes.
Okay, so let me finish. Okay.
But this is why I'm horrified by you. You're going to, yes, you can enumerate all the reasons I'm horrified by you in one go. And I look forward to hearing it.
You want me to outline why you're horrified by me?
You're about to. You're going to explain that the sanctity of the doctor-patient relationship and respecting that, privacy concerns, diagnosing people in public, not having people committed when they're about to kill themselves and you know they're 100% trying to kill themselves, that these are all comparable to jaywalking. Yes, this is why I'm horrified by you. This is why when people ask me about you, I start screaming about how you don't give a fuck about your patients.
Right. Not based on what I've said, not based on what I say I believe, but on your intuiting of how I feel.
It's not intuition. It's the same way if I said, well, somebody raped a child and dumped their body in a refrigerator in a junkyard. That's like jaywalking.
Nuanced. Yeah, that rape is much less nuanced.
Don't tell me what I know and don't know about the nuances.
You should know. And if you don't know, then we go to the second conversation.
I think rape is pretty nuanced. And I think you know that I know that, or that I think that.
Right, but the ethical rules around rape are much less nuanced, right? I agree that if a practitioner raped a baby, that it's both unethical and immoral.
Can we...
Yes,
okay, this is going to sound really weird.
Wait. The psychological community agrees with me.
When we say nuance, what do we mean here, Max? When somebody says nuance, what do you think they're saying? What is Kyla saying? Because I think when you hear nuance, you're measuring this in like degrees of how bad it is. But I think when she says nuance, she's saying number of things there are to consider. Because when she says, well, I think this is nuance, she's saying it's not nuanced, it's even worse than rape. She might not even necessarily disagree in some circumstances, but she's saying whether it's worse or not worse is not the issue. It's how many things there are to consider. When it comes to rape isn't not nuanced because it's really bad. It's not nuanced because it's pretty clear cut, generally speaking, like what rape is and that rape is bad. But when we're talking about having a therapeutic relationship with somebody that we don't have a professional relationship with, there's a lot more things to consider, which I think we all agree with here.
I think you're trying to rescue Kyla.
Oh man, I love getting called a simp for. I've been called a simp for you by so many people, and for Kyle. That's good. I mean, we can go there if you want, but that shuts the conversation down. But never mind. Okay, I'm gonna speak more forcefully.
Wait, why does that shut the conversation down? You're the moderator. I'm not allowed to give you feedback about your moderation.
Okay, I'm gonna speak more forcefully. Okay, you have a misunderstanding of what nuance means. You seem to be falsely thinking that nuance means something is better or worse than something else. And your response, the evidence that I have of this, is you saying something along the lines of like, "This isn't more nuanced. It's even worse than rape." Something can be worse than rape, but still more nuanced. For instance, bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki, these might be some of the worst things that have ever happened, but whether they're good or bad doesn't depend on the degree of badness, depends on how many considerations have to be made before we get to good or bad. Dr. K's relationship, and I'm just saying this as a fact, and if you disagree, you're just wrong. Dr. K's relationship with Reckful is more nuanced than a rape case. Now, it might be worse than rape.
I disagree.
But then you're wrong. But you guys can discuss that. You're insane if you think that. But go ahead.
Okay, I have some more feedback about your moderation now.
Okay, yeah. Like, if you're not even willing to make this concession, I don't know, like, where the conversation
I just think you're wrong. Again, when I think you're wrong.
Wait, about this. You're incorrect. And then
I have something to say. When you guys are willing to let me speak, I would like to respond to the moderator. Hey, Stephen, will you moderate? Do you want to moderate? Okay.
Jesus.
When the moderator of a discussion says, if you don't agree with me, you're not willing to make a concession, it implies that you just are right and you know what's right and everybody else is wrong. I think this, while maybe your personal position in the matter, it's not good moderation to just tell us.
I agree that. But
I just disagree with you. I disagree with you. This is why do you think I made a whole fucking documentary about it? Like, it kind of comports. Let me finish. It kind of comports with my behavior around this topic.
It doesn't.
Right?
It doesn't.
Well, let me explain how it does. From the first moment I laid eyes on Dr. K and Byron, I have been acting like he did something that is so bad that it is worse than rape. I have been tweeting at him. I have been contacting authorities and lawyers and medical boards. I've been collecting evidence, making documentaries, making stream reactions. I've been acting like, wow, this guy did something really bad. And I've explicitly said, I think it is my job to explain how bad it is because people in streamer world don't seem to fucking understand it. So I need to bring in experts from expert world and explain to streamer world why this is so incredibly bad and why it is literally worse than rape. That's why I'm reacting this way. And so when people say, well, no, I think it's more nuanced than that. I see red and I freak out. So I understand that nuance and good and bad are different scales. I agree with you.
You don't understand, because everything you just gave supports my argument. If you had a case where you were reviewing a rape between two people, you wouldn't need to make a documentary about it, and you sure as fuck wouldn't need to contact professionals.
What are you talking about? There's tons of cases. There's tons of rape cases that are complex.
No,
absolutely.
No. There might be rape cases that are trying to explore the fact of the matter of what actually happened.
You do rape reviews. You literally do streams where you do rape reviews. Where people get. Okay. So you agree that
you would have to the fact that you have to go through so much effort to prove, because the facts, when we do a rape review, we're arguing over the fact of what happened. That's where the investigation is. There is no argument over the fact of what happened with Reckful and Dr. K. Everybody can see the facts. If everybody could see the facts of a rape, if a guy takes a girl to a room, slips her a drug, and rapes her, I don't need to contact a professional for that. I don't need to do a 2-hour documentary. It was bad. It was a rape. Boom, you're done.
A lot of rapes are.
I let you finish. Now you have to let me finish, okay? The fact that you have to go through so much work to show that what Dr. K was bad, and by the way, I'm not even making a judgment on that. It might be really bad. That's fine. You might have successfully proven that everything he did was even worse than rape. But the fact that you have to go through so much work to establish that, when everybody can see the fact of the matter, literally proves that it is more nuanced. Because if it wasn't nuanced, we could all just go, look at the facts. Look how bad that is. But you have to contact professionals to illustrate that. That's what I mean when I say it's nuanced.
Okay. I disagree with you. I think that you have proven and talked about multiple times about situations being kind of rapey, right? So you know that there are lots of situations that some people would think are rape and some people wouldn't think are rape, and there's a whole debate about what rape even is. I remember watching a stream with you and Vosh where you were talking about should the word rape even be used to describe some of these interactions where somebody's just getting pressured into doing something and then consents to it? Is that the same word we're going to use where somebody gets a gun held to somebody else's head? You yourself have engaged in so many conversations about whether or not something is rape, even when all the facts are laid out. You're not just fact fighting. You are also
agree with you.
You are fact finding and interpreting. So rape is okay. So rape, I believe rape and consent are very nuanced, complex.
No, you're wrong there.
Oh.
Stop.
Okay.
It is
Wait.
not always nuanced.
I didn't say it. Yes,
You
it's
said
not always
rape
nuanced.
you said rape is nuanced. It's not always. There are times.
Well, I was in the middle of my fucking sentence. I was saying that they are complicated and nuanced concepts. Yes, it's a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
the issue, Max, is
sometimes
that you're
something's
actually
really
talking on like 4 different levels. Like you're kind of weaseling away from the point. So you give one
let me
very
fucking
precise
finish.
hypothetical.
Let me finish.
And then
Let me
no, because
finish.
I haven't talked in like
I would
10
like to
minutes. Shut the
finish.
fuck up, dude. So
I would like to
here's one
finish
thing,
what I'm
right?
saying.
The
No,
hypothetical
I don't
you
want to
gave
listen
was
to you.
very
I'm going to fucking
precise,
mute you.
right? It
Steven,
was
I need
a
you to make a
situation.
ruling on who's.
Okay, here,
I need you
let
to
her
make a ruling.
Okay, hold on, wait.
Make a
'cause it's supposed
fucking
to be you
ruling.
two. Let her make a statement, and then you two, and then you can respond. Go.
Okay,
and then
but
guys
do you
can go.
acknowledge that while I was in the middle of making my last statement, you interrupted me and screamed for
Yeah, but do
fucking
you
5
acknowledge she
minutes?
hasn't spoken in like 5 fucking minutes? So, and it's supposed to be.
Yes, but that's not my problem. You're
No,
the
it's
fucking
my
moderator.
fault. I'm punishing you. I'm punishing you for my mistakes now. The sins of the father. Go.
Okay,
It's my
good.
bad. Let her speak, and then you can respond to her, and then you two can resume your conversation.
tell you what, I will let the man finish, and then I can go after.
Oh well, thank you.
Specifically, probably more precisely, the man baby can finish, and then
Stop with the. Why would you take your time to talk and then ad hum immediately? Good one.
What I'm saying is, rape is can be nuanced and can be non-nuanced. I agree with you that I said a sentence that made it sound like I was conflating something being nuanced with something being not bad, and I agree it makes sense to separate those out. I think your position that your rape reviews are just fact-finding missions and not interpretations is just not true. Either you're wrong or lying, and I think that you're missing something here. There's 2 ends to this of establishing whether Dr. K did something bad. There is, did he break ethics guidelines, and how flagrantly did he break them? Is it nuanced? Is it one of those cases of, well, I'm your boss at Walmart and I just gave you a raise and then I take you into the back room and say, do you want to suck my dick? And it's like, oh, that's kind of rapey. Or is it gun to your head in a parking lot rape? And what I'm saying is, it's gun to your head parking lot style ethics breaches. But the reason and the purpose of my documentary is not to convince people of the facts, because the facts are already there. It's to educate people about why what he is doing is such a flagrant violation, and to get experts to come in and look at these violations or talk about them in a ethics, following way, to explain why and how it is such a flagrant violation. So my mission since learning of this is not to fact find, it's to explain to people like Kyla here, and I guess you, why this is such a flagrant and dangerous and destructive violation that I think it is worse than rape. And so, yes, we're talking on 2 levels. One is, am I right? And you clearly you both disagree with me. But the other is, do I actually
made a judgment on that. Go ahead.
Okay, and you've never made a judgment. Okay, but the implication is you disagree with me. But the other is, do I actually believe this? And so all I'm trying to say right now is, this is my position. It's fine if you don't. Well, it's not fine if you don't agree with it. But for the purpose of this conversation, I accept that you don't agree with it, Kyla. But that is my position. So when you say, why are you screaming about how I don't care if my clients kill themselves? I'm not saying you literally don't care, and I'm not saying that you actually said that.
You literally did, and you said, yes, she clearly was.
Yes, I literally said that, but I wasn't saying that you literally said that. I hope, and I think, and I trust that that I know you didn't literally get on a live stream and say, guys, I only care about money. It's hyperbole.
But even your
I'm saying the message
of
you're
what
sending,
I believed were false.
Aha. And so that is what I'm
false.
saying. That is why I'm saying.
Because I didn't say those things or even imply those things.
I understand, but
The
we
only
already
way
went,
you could perceive
but,
that as
so
what
the
I
reason-
said is because you're engaging in bad faith and self-deception.
And I
Specifically, the
believe that
self-deception.
you're engaging in not knowing what you're talking about. So let's get that. Let's get
There's
the let's go all the ad homs out of the way.
I'm not ad
Is there
homing
any,
at
are there
all.
any other
Bad
any
faith
other
isn't
thing?
an ad hom. It's a very
Is it-
specific
it
thing.
kind of
You can
is.
be in bad faith by lying or engaging in self-deception plus a couple of other things.
I don't think
I don't think you're
self-deception
lying.
is bad faith.
I'm willing to believe you when
Okay.
you say that you didn't lie, but
Okay.
that means that you have created
Okay.
an image of me, probably Dr. K, and what I believe, and then you told people that.
Okay, what
You
do you want
lied.
to do about? Okay,
Because you've deceived, you've ruminated a version of me into existence that never was there, and then criticized it and made it seem like that was the implications.
I
and
thought
the
we made
beliefs
some
that I had.
progress. I thought we made some progress with the child rape analogy. I thought that
No.
we got to a place where you understood that if I think that what Dr. K did is worse than rape, then you can see why I'd react so strongly and in the same way I reacted to what you said. Do you understand that?
So the issue is that your belief
you just
in
answer
that
this question?
is self-deceiving.
That's fine. Can you just
And it
answer this
doesn't
question?
matter. It doesn't
That's
matter.
fine. That's fine.
You got to
Can
answer that
just-
question.
can you
Wait,
answer this
pose the question again.
Do you understand why, if I think that what Dr. K did is worse than rape, why, when you do a mild defense of it, my takeaway is so extremely hostile and like angry and critical of you? Do you understand why I
Yes.
would say those things? Okay.
I understand, but it doesn't
so-
matter why
so-
you lied about me. It doesn't matter why.
I don't. But do you see how if you had defended child rape in the same way, it wouldn't actually be a lie. It would be more like, yes, she didn't say it like this, but this is what her position is. Do you see why it would be still hyperbolic, but still truthful about what I think of you if you had done that? So the real question.
But you didn't say
is-
this is what I think of her. She said this is what she was saying. This is what she believes ethics to be.
Okay,
And yes, she clearly was.
You keep slipping out of answering this question. I asked you this like 5 times earlier, and you said yes, and now you're doing it again. I have to ask you the same thing. Do you see why, if he had raped a child, and you had said, well, the rule is there somewhat to protect for insurance reasons, do you see why I would then scream about how you're a rape apologist?
As close as we can get in this analogy is that I didn't defend child rape.
I don't
said
want-
Wait,
rape
hold on.
is wrong.
Hold on. You gotta have to answer that question.
Do you
so if
see
he
why I
truly
would-
thought that what he did was like as bad as rape, do you understand why he would feel like you're defending it essentially if you're refusing to, in the strongest of words, condemn Dr. K?
I've already
Okay,
said that
okay,
I understand
okay.
that.
So, I think you have to make a decision now about whether I'm lying about you or lying about what I believe.
I've
Because
already
if
said that you've engaged in
I would like to
self-deception.
finish my sentence. I would like to finish this sentence. If I'm lying about you, or if I'm lying about what I believe, then it's like, I don't really think what he's doing is that bad. And then yes, it would be very dishonest for me to go out and grandstand and yell about how you don't care if people kill themselves and you're greedy, blah, blah, blah. But if I do believe it's worse than rape, then I think that you are, I think you're defending something indefensible. I think you are doing something horrible. I actually
I understand.
I actually
I
think you are
understand that.
destroying people.
I understand that. The
Okay.
problem is that your perception of that is so wildly off because the reality is that
great. Okay, so let's
a
stick with that.
clear-cut case of
Let's-
child rape
great.
didn't occur, and I'm not saying, well, there's nuance. I'm not saying
I
this is more
understand.
akin to like.
Then let's for the rest
let me
of this
finish.
conversation.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Okay.
So, the difference is that you're making it seem like she defended rape, and that's how I feel, and so that's legitimate. And I'm saying I can understand why you feel that way. The problem is that that means you engaged in self-deception to come away with that takeaway, because
Okay.
that isn't what happened. In fact, there are multiple points of criticisms you levied at him that I agreed with you. In fact, I think I explicitly said you have a lot of valid criticisms here.
Wait a second. You're slipping back. Now we have to re-ask you the same question again. You're now saying, like, once we lock this down,
Wait, what do you feel like she slipped back into, just to help me understand?
Well, if she says your response makes sense if you think this was worse than rape, then it doesn't matter if you said, well, no, I did criticize some of the things he did. Like, you can't,
Her issue is
I'm sorry, if he raped a child and you say, well, I criticize some things he did, but other things, no, I'm still going to go fucking ballistic if he raped a child and you do that. So you have to understand, and I need you to look through this lens for the rest of this conversation, that I think what he did is worse than rape. And I need you to keep that laser focus.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
I need you to put on those binoculars.
It's more complicated than child
I understand
rape.
that, but you're saying two
he
things.
Might have
you're
dropped
trying to have it both. I need to finish
city,
talking. I need to say something.
Still more nuanced.
Stephen, I need you to shut her. I need you to stop her. I need you to shut her up. I have to say something.
What?
I'm trying to answer your question. Stephen, you asked me how is she trying to have it.
Whatever you're about to say is pointless because I see where the disagreement is, but I don't think we can move past this. It's an
but
issue.
she's trying to have it both ways. No, I'm not talking.
Hold on. She's not trying to have it both ways.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. And you're going to defend. I'm trying to answer your question. You asked me.
Listen,
you asked me. You asked me. I'm trying to answer.
Chill. No. It's.
I just want to answer your question.
Okay. No, you don't.
Yes, I do. I literally do want to answer your question.
Whatever you're about to say is completely irrelevant. But go ahead and say it.
And I'm going to say.
Exactly
Thank you, moderator.
That I would have said anyway. I'm going to say the exact thing I would have said. So
okay, great. Good for you. Okay. You asked me, what is she trying to slip back into? The reason earlier I was saying I really need to pin you down on this because you're saying on the one hand that my response is inappropriate, that I'm lying about you, that it's excessively hyperbolic. And then you're saying on the other hand that what he did isn't that bad. And I said, well, let's assume that I believe what he did is that bad. Do you understand why I would be hyperbolic? And she said yes.
Yep.
So once she says yes, so if you believe that I think it's worse than rape, then you have to accept my hyperbole, and you can't say I don't.
Why not? I'm gonna say exactly what I was gonna say. Nothing.
Good for you. You're proud of yourself for not listening to what I fucking said. Good for you.
No. The issue is that we're back at the point of you not understanding nuance, right? So let me give an example. Okay. Let me say that somebody told me. Okay. They said, I don't think the bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima were actually that bad. And now let's say me personally, let's say that I've done a great deal of military history and ethics, like philosophy work. And I happen to know that it was the worst thing in human history, okay? For me to come at that person with all the anger and all the fiery righteousness of the comparison of a person denying a very clear-cut rape, and I say, well, look, this was even worse than rape, shows that the issue you're having is a lack of understanding of the nuance, not the degree or the severity of the badness of the thing. You're not going to agree with what I'm saying, but that is exactly the issue. She's not upset that you're saying that it's as bad. Hold on, she's not upset that you're saying that it's as bad as rape or anything like that, or that she doesn't understand that it's bad as rape, blah, blah, blah. It's the issue is you're making it sound like it should be obvious. And the fact that she's saying it's not that bad, she must be a fucking rapist herself or a rape supporter. That's the issue. You're getting lost in how nuanced your issues are, not how bad they are.
Here's the problem with your analogy is that you're in the premise, you're using a situation that is nuanced and very debated. Right? So some bombings...
This is nuanced and debated.
I understand that you think that, but I'm saying it's only nuanced and debated by people who don't know what they're fucking talking about.
Okay, no. You are literally
and you
wrong.
can proudly count yourself among those people who don't know what they're talking about. I would like to respond to what you're saying.
Okay, hold on. No, I have to ask you one question. Do you know what the Goldwater rule is?
Yes.
Okay, explain that to me and how it came about.
No. I want to respond to what you just said.
No, okay. So I'll explain it, okay? Because I just read it.
You're abusing your moderation powers.
No, I'm not abusing my moderation.
Yes, you are. Let me respond to what you just said. You just said you just made all these arguments, and I can't respond to them because you're allowed to tell me to shut up and then quiz me on the Goldwater rule.
Because
let me respond to what you said.
Statements that nobody here knows what they're even talking about, right?
Yes, I think you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and I would like to respond.
Okay, all right, go.
Okay, great. So you bringing up Nagasaki and Hiroshima as an example is a little unfair because we both already know that that's a really difficult decision to make. And we know that good came out of it and a lot of bad came out of it. It's a hotly debated thing. There are some people who think it's the best thing, some people who think it's the worst thing. But you know that you and I both probably think, well, I don't know. It's a mixed bag. In using that analogy, you are assuming that Dr. K's relationship and conduct with Reckful is also a mixed bag. And the whole purpose of my educational therapy ethics arc here is to explain that it's not. And so it's fine if you disagree with me But I need you to accept that that is my position. And the thing I think, to answer your other question, you didn't let me answer, what Kyla is slipping back into is that if you accept that I think you are defending a non-nuanced situation, and I'm using child rape because all three of us believe that when you rape a child, it's bad. I think you're defending something that's fucking simple. And that is why I'm reacting this way. Now, for you to say that me criticizing her is like me criticizing somebody who said, well, I think Nagasaki and Hiroshima were necessary, to say that they're evil, like genociders or something, that's not a fair analogy. It's more like if we were talking about somebody who raped and murdered a bunch of children, and then somebody else said, well, what were they wearing?
Sure.
Then for me to call that person an apologist would make sense.
The reason why I bring up the Goldwater rule is because you keep saying, you're doing this. Now, I don't want to say it's a bad appeal to authority, because an appeal to authority is fine sometimes. But you keep making this appeal to authority that this is so obvious. Everyone in the field agrees with me. But it seemed like during the time when Goldwater was running for president, that was so unobvious that the APA had to make statements, because a ton of psychologists and psychiatrists were entering into the public record their statements about the mental health of a candidate. And not only that, but recently with Donald Trump, other professionals have been making those statements. And right now,
Absolutely.
if I go on YouTube, and I know this for a fact, if I go on YouTube right now, I can find full channels of psychologists and psychiatrists, some with PhDs, some that are physicians, that are making their opinions on serial killers and whether he was NPD and if he's cluster B or cluster C, right? So when you tell me it's so obvious in the field, that doesn't seem to be the case. To
That's
me,
fine.
I might be retarded, but it seems like even in the field, this is still a debated thing for where the rules are. So I just don't like it because you're impugning, you can impugn me, I don't care. But when you're impugning Kyla and you're saying, well, it's so obvious, you dumb fuck, but it doesn't seem like it's that obvious. It seems like it's pretty hotly contested.
But I'm not, okay.
There's almost no nuance in adult raping a child. There's a ton of nuance in dual relationships and what it takes to establish a client-therapist relationship.
Yes, I understand that you, okay, again, I'm not trying to argue my position. I'm trying to get you to accept that this is my position. So we can argue the positions once you accept this is my position. But I need you first to just use this lens. Remember, Max thinks I'm defending something that is worse than a therapist raping their client.
Well, but she was willing to defend, she accepted that, but then she said that if she's going to accept that, the next stage of the conversation was that either you were engaged in some level of self-deception or you were bad faith, I think is what she
That's
said.
fine, but the problem that I think she's trying to slip back into is to say, also, I said some things that were more nuanced.
Just to be clear, just like you told me not to mind read you, do not mind read me. And do not tell me that I'm weaseling, and stop projecting onto me. You keep telling me that I'm interrupting you. You keep doing all of this
telling
shit.
me that I'm projecting is you projecting. You're projecting that I'm projecting. You are mind reading that I'm mind reading. You literally, okay, I'll quote you exactly. You said, I levied some criticisms of Dr. Or you said, I thought some of the criticisms of Dr. K were fair or something like that, right? You said that,
Not
right?
exactly verbatim, but sure.
Okay. Do you see how if I think you're defending a rapist and murderer and cannibal of children, that for you to say, whoa, I do think some of the things they did were bad. I was willing to say that. Do you see how that doesn't matter? I don't fucking care if you think some of the criticisms about Dr. K are good. I don't care. It's not relevant. It has no bearing on whether I'm going to go on another live stream and say, yep, I think Kyla doesn't give a fuck. Do you understand that is the message you're sending? It does. I think you're defending something awful, and I think it's awful that you're defending it. So whether you have some criticisms of Hitler, I still think he's a pretty bad guy. And if you say, I think that the ethics or whatever of O.J. Simpson killing his wife, like, I'm going to still have the same reaction.
Your feelings are fine. I'm also allowed to feel mad at you for lying and
I'm not saying you can't be mad at me. I'm just saying you're being, I think,
I already told you can feel the way that you want. I'm not being slippery.
Well, I do think you're being slippery.
I am not.
Okay, well, I guess I have my next t-shirt figured out. It'll say, I'm not being slippery, and I'll send you one if you want one.
Do I get like 10% of the sale cuts just since it is my statement?
No.
Oh. That seems kind of...
I'll see you in court.
Maybe even unethical.
You can sue me for that when you sue me for slander.
I have no intention of suing you. I would like it to be clear, though.
And I have no
that-
intention of reporting you for your fucking...
I know you don't.
Great.
You also, I mean, I'm not even a psychologist, and I've been very clear about that. So the ethics we're talking about, theoretically, I'm not actually beholden to any of them. I'm beholden to addiction counselor ethics, which are pretty different.
Right. What is your level of education in psychology?
Why do you want to ask me that?
Because I think that a lot of people in chat think that you have a PhD or something, and that you outrank me.
What education did you get specifically on psych ethics? Like, did you take a graduate course?
Well, hold
on
on. To be
psych ethics?
fair, MrGirl did ask this question first. I will say.
I don't have a PhD, but I've been pretty clear about that.
What is your level of education in psychology?
So I have an honors psych degree in undergrad, and then I have a graduate diploma in psychometry. Licensed addictions counselor, I suppose, would be the...
I have a non-honors bachelor's in psychology.
Okay. Did you take any graduate level psych ethics courses?
I haven't taken any graduate level courses at all.
Did you take any psych ethics courses in your undergrad? Like specifically on psych ethics APA?
No.
Okay. I have.
Okay.
So I am telling you, you're incorrect about ethics. Now, you
Well,
do not
wait,
believe
just
me,
because you took
can
a
just go back
course
to
in it,
APA.
I wasn't trying to like, I don't think that you taking a course in it means you know what you're talking about.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
But when it comes to like me saying you don't know nothing, like
And
it would
that I
put
would
me a
say-
little bit, I'd have a little bit more knowledge.
You would think so.
Right. One of the people I sent your video to was the chair of psych ethics in my university.
Okay.
And so I asked her a bunch of questions about it.
Okay.
Would you like to move on to something else, or do you want to keep asking me about my education?
No, I literally just wanted to know what your level of because we're talking about appeals to authority. I want to know to what extent you are. I know I assumed that you're more educated about it than I am.
Right.
I don't think anybody was trying to pull credentials in this conversation, though, to be
That is
fair.
correct. Stephen has also said that you're wrong, and he doesn't have any credentials in psych ethics.
You don't know that.
That's true. He could have a secret PhD.
Okay, so yeah, as we
Music or something.
as we continue, I guess what I'm just trying to nail down here is that if you accept that I think that you're defending something truly abhorrent, then I think my hyperbole and passionate response actually makes a lot of sense.
So your feelings within your own world make sense, but
I'm not saying my feelings
As we've
make
already
sense. I'm
said-
saying my reaction. If I believe that what he did is worse than rape, and you can say it's not, but if I believe that, just like I think it makes sense.
now we're
when
going back
people-
to the nuance conversation. I
Yeah,
didn't
this
say
is
that's
a
not
nuance
worse.
thing.
I don't want to go back to the nuanced conversation. I want you
That's
to
what
listen to
you're
what I'm
hoping.
fucking
Then
saying.
move
Just shut
forward.
the fuck up and let me finish.
We're not gonna
Please stop
agree
talking.
because
Okay, I want to talk
correct.
uninterrupted for 30 seconds.
Again, sure, go for it.
Okay. It makes sense that people who think abortion is murder picket outside abortion clinics. I'm like that. And I want you to accept that I think this is wrong, the way a psychopath standing outside an abortion clinic, dumping cow's blood all over themselves and shitting their pants, screaming, babbling nonsense. I want you to accept that I think what Dr. K did is as wrong as that. And so if you accept that, then you'll see that my hyperbolic criticism of you is actually warranted given that I think that. The problem I think we're having is that you think that I'm wrong. That's it.
I don't think, I hate to repeat this, but I don't think that's the issue, whether you're right or wrong, or whether she thinks you're right or wrong. It's just a matter of literally how nuanced the topic is. Because if the topic had no nuance and she disagreed with you, she would be disgusting. And she would even agree that she would be disgusting.
No,
but if the topic is
but what
highly
if we don't
complicated,
agree about how nuanced it is? What do we do then, Stephen?
then you have to argue the nuance. But I
You
would
don't
argue
think
that this is
dual
a fact of the
relationships?
matter thing, and I can't imagine you would say this is not a nuanced situation.
It's not. It's not. You just don't understand the rules. That's it.
you don't think
just
all
don't
relationships-
understand.
Sure, but don't you think that do you think I'm at least of average intelligence?
I think
at
you're
least-
I think you're highly intelligent.
Okay, so if you consider me to be highly intelligent and I don't understand the rules, don't you think that makes it kind of nuanced?
No, you have a
Or am I
blind
just
spot.
exceptionally stupid around this issue?
I don't think you've done a lot of research on it, and I think you have a blind spot.
Okay.
What if I olive bridged a little bit by saying your feelings might be understandable, but your behavior is not acceptable, just like nut jobs screaming outside of an abortion clinic, right? Their feelings might be understandable based on they think that people are killing babies, but that doesn't make their behavior acceptable.
And their behavior is unacceptable because they're not really killing babies. They're only sort of killing babies, right?
Right, because obviously abortion is nuanced, right?
Wait, no. It's not. That was not true. The issue isn't because they're only sort of killing babies. The issue is because it's nuanced. If there was a protest run outside of an area that was kind of killing babies, that would be horrible. Then they should be protesting like that.
Well, getting an abortion is kind of killing a baby, but it's kind of not. It's complicated. It's not cut and dry whether it's killing a baby. It's nuanced. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. Now imagine there was a. Now imagine there was a.
Relationships are nuanced.
Well, now imagine there's a clinic.
If a doctor-patient relationship is nuanced and complicated.
Okay, I don't agree with you. So before we get into,
I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you.
That's fine. You don't have to tell me anything. I'm fine not agreeing with you. So before we get into that conversation, I'm just trying to establish.
But you did previously agree with me that dual relationships are more nuanced. Like the psych ethics around dual relationships are nuanced.
Well, okay. I just want to say my position one more time. When we're talking about nuance, there's a scale, there's a spectrum of non-nuanced infractions to nuanced infractions. So the same thing was with rape, same thing with bombing, with shooting people, with cops shooting black people. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it makes less sense. Sometimes it makes no sense at all. That's why George Floyd got so much momentum, because that didn't make any sense. And what I'm saying is this Dr. K situation is the George Floyd of ethical violations, and you're saying it's more like a Breonna Taylor of ethical violations. And so that's my disagreement with Destiny, or Stephen. Stephen is saying that that it's not cut and dry because people are arguing about it. But what we've seen with Kyle Rittenhouse, we've seen smart people say dumb things. Like, you being smart doesn't mean I'm going to agree with you. There's shit I disagree with you about. I agree with you about a lot of stuff, but I think you're just wrong here. And so
I don't think nobody has an issue of who's right or wrong. It's just the issue.
Well, you keep telling me that I'm wrong, Stephen. So we do have an issue because you keep saying that I don't think what I think, and I feel like you're gaslighting me. I feel like you're both gaslighting me.
Listen to what I'm saying. I'm not telling you that you're wrong about anything related to what you said about it. There's only one issue that I'm telling you wrong about.
That's the one thing that I'm still arguing with you about it.
The one thing that I'm telling you that you're wrong about. I'm not gaslighting you, and don't fucking say that. Don't fucking anime me, okay? That I'm gaslighting. I'm not gaslighting.
I think you're gaslighting me. No, I literally think you're gaslighting me.
I am telling you that I believe you're wrong about one thing, and that is how complicated this issue is. That's it. Yes, that's it. But I'm not arguing. Hold on. I just want to be clear. It might be worse than rape. It might be. You might be right on that. But I'm not arguing about that. I don't disagree with you about that.
I know. That's not what I'm saying. I think you're both gaslighting me. And the reason I think you're gaslighting me is that I'm not allowed to just take my own position. When I say this is my position, you say, well, surely, Max, I'm sure you would have to 100% agree with me that this is more nuanced. Like, we agree this is more nuanced. I'm saying that my position, position is.
Okay, I understand. I agree. Okay. I understand. And that, what you're saying right there, you're right. Okay?
Okay.
We both agree with you. You should be able to personally have whatever the fuck position you want on that.
Okay. So that's what I'm fighting for. That's all I've been fighting for the last half an hour.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Hold on. You can have that position, okay?
Great.
You can feel whatever you want about that. That's fine. Okay. But that's not the issue, okay? The issue is that when you make that position public, now there's going to be added scrutiny. If I
absolutely, and I'd love to get into that. But before we get into that, I need you and Kyla to accept that my official position entered into this conversation is that this is not a nuanced debatable case.
Sure.
This is
No
as
one,
clear.
That's fine.
This is as
Yes,
clear as day.
We agree.
Okay,
we agree,
but
I agree. You can have that feeling.
Yes,
when
but
we
I
make it
also
public,
I also
determine-
need to draw
Okay.
attention to the multiple
Go.
times that you have created analogies implying in the setup of the analogy that this is a debatable complex case and that is not my position. Telling me that I'm the same as somebody calling somebody a
Sure.
genocide
I'm sorry.
sympathizer. Okay.
There is.
Hold on.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to get you to
subtext.
apologize.
Okay.
I just
I'm not
want.
apologizing. Trust me, I'll never apologize.
You
Okay.
just said you started to say I'm sorry. You stopped
No.
yourself.
I was going to say I'm sorry you misunderstood. Okay. There
Oh,
is.
thank God.
Imagine me ever doing a real apology. Nice one.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that the subtext or super text, the meta, is that it's not so much that I'm trying. If you told me this personally, I wouldn't give a fuck. If we were having a one-on-one call, I don't care. But when you make it public, it's
Yeah.
a different kind of statement now, right?
Okay.
If personally someone told me, I kind of think that like all black people are thieves or something. If somebody personally said that, I'm like, okay, well that's
Okay,
kind of
you're doing it again.
But no, shut the fuck up and let me
You're doing
finish.
it again.
Let me finish.
You're
No, no,
doing
no,
it
no,
again.
no,
You
no,
literally
no,
are.
no,
You're interrupting me to do it again. You're gaslighting
I'm not
me.
interrupting you. I was in the middle of a
Okay.
statement. I'm saying that if somebody told me that personally, even if
Yeah.
I super disagreed, that's fine. You can have that opinion. You know, whatever opinion you want. I don't care that much. But when that becomes public, now we're gonna have a much different conversation about it, and that's what's happened here.
Okay. Let me retool your analogy a little bit.
Retool
Imagine
it.
if somebody
Go ahead.
said to me privately, "All thieves are thieves." That would be fine. But if you're going to go out in public and say all thieves are thieves, well, then we're going to have a massive disagreement. We're going to have a whole conversation about whether all thieves are thieves, because that's a really controversial statement to make. And what I'm saying is, in the world of therapy ethics, that's how controversial what I'm saying is, that thieves are thieves. And in I don't fucking understand therapy ethics world where you guys live, it's a really it's more like saying all black people are thieves, which is a really controversial statement that does bear some debating. So I'm fine arguing about it, but I want you to understand and stop creating analogies that make me just that where the setup is that I'm wrong.
Hey,
Okay, sorry. Go
Okay.
ahead.
yes, I accept.
I
what your
accept your
position
apology.
is. No, I'm not going to apologize to you.
I was accepting
I
Steven's
accept.
apology.
I apologize for you being upset.
And I accept that too.
Okay.
I accept what your position is.
Great. Okay. So no more talk
wait,
of how.
wait.
If you
Stop
accept that-
it. I'm not done. And stop fucking interrupting me.
Oh.
Please.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
Your position, now that I've accepted that that's what you believe, I am
Yes.
telling you, is an incredibly stupid position by my view.
Okay.
I believe you have a very stupid position.
I understand that. But I need you to understand that my position encompasses anything bad you said about Dr. K, any nuanced statements you made about Dr. K. It doesn't matter. I'm the boulder in the beginning of Indiana Jones, okay? And you're saying I said this is the best. That's a little like reed sticking out of the ground. It doesn't matter. These are twigs. And if we're talking about somebody raping a child, you'd understand why those are twigs. So as we move forward, I would just like you to understand and just, I guess, talk to me like that is my position, even if you think it's stupid. Both of you. You keep telling me it's not my position or that it shouldn't be.
No, we're saying
but
you're
it is.
wrong. We're saying
Okay,
you're incorrect.
good. That's good.
You can
I like
believe that, but you're wrong because
Good.
it's not obvious from an ethical perspective.
I'm
Why are
glad-
there hundreds of books written about dual relationships and the difficulty of navigating that as a therapist?
Is this a
but
real
there's not
question?
a lot of books. Yeah, actually, why are there
okay.
not a lot of books about why it's not okay to rape your infant client? There's not a lot of books about that. Because one thing it seems pretty clear, and
Do you
the other
think
one
it's
is
okay
really
to
not
have
fucking clear.
Do you think it's okay to have sex with an ex-client 2 years after you have stopped therapy? Whatever there's a timeline, right? There's a length
It's
of time.
2 years. You have a 2 years, and the APA strongly goes against it, but it's not actually unethical at that point.
Aha. Okay. So, do you think it's unethical to have sex with a client 5 seconds before the 2 years have elapsed? Do you think
Now
somebody
we're
should
getting-
have?
Don't we going to get into the nuance of
No,
ethics?
I don't want to have a meta conversation. I just want you to answer the fucking question. I just want you to answer the question. Do you think that's unethical to have sex with your client 5 seconds before that timeline has elapsed? Do you think that's unethical? Yes or no? Kyla, the floor is yours.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah, it would be technically
Okay.
unethical, but it's
Oh,
not necessarily
technically,
immoral.
but it's not that bad. It's worth debating. I don't know if
Yeah.
somebody's career should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let me finish. Let me
Same
finish.
like
Let
with
me
dual
finish. Let me finish.
relationships.
Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. So, that's a rape example where it's not really that bad. Technically, according to the APA, it's rape. But
Real
it's
quick,
not,
that's not a rape example. That'd be an unethical sexual relationship, just to be clear. But go ahead.
okay, I'm calling it rape as a catch-all for statutory rape. You're having sex with somebody you have power over.
It wouldn't be statutory either. That's pretty specific in what it's labeled as.
Well, it's bad sex. Okay, go ahead.
Bad
Sure.
sex, yes. Okay.
Unethical sexual
Okay.
relationship.
So you have sex with somebody who's 17 years old, 364 days, and 23 hours,
You sick
59
fuck.
minutes, and 59 seconds. Right. Okay. My point is that there are examples of rape that are nuanced and worth debating, and then fucking an infant. Again, in your example, you're saying fucking an infant is not nuanced, and you're saying dual relationships. Well, some dual relationships, Kyla, are worth writing a book about. They are confusing. You know,
All
people
dual
like.
relationships are worth writing it about.
Okay, you think there's no? Do you think that if I were Destiny's therapist, right now, I was secretly his therapist, that this would be a complex thing? Like, you wouldn't feel comfortable saying like, well, what's happening is unethical. If you're literally Steven's therapist, this is wrong. You would need to write a book. If I was Steven's therapist, do you think that this would be an unethical dual relationship, like simply and clearly, or do you think it would be really nuanced?
Probably be really nuanced, because I don't think
Really?
I've ever
So you
seen
wouldn't
any
be
therapy for him.
so if I were secretly Steven's therapist, you wouldn't be comfortable saying like, I don't think this is appropriate.
No, neither would the APA. It's like, have you read through multiple relationships, like the ethics on that?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you know that the only thing that's really, really didactically clear in that book about like dual relationships is sexual relationships, correct?
No, I don't think that's
Yes.
true.
The only thing so there's bartering rules. There's recommendations about best practice with bartering. There's also family friend rules. And again, it doesn't say that you can't. It says like you should be careful. But you can't do therapy with them if you've ever had sex with them, literally ever. You can't do that, right? So there's a couple of really didactic, clear stuff in the APA about dual relationships.
Okay,
And then
so there
there's
are-
a whole
there
bunch
are
of other
dual
shit. And I don't think Byron and Dr. K were having sex at any point.
Okay.
But falls into the more nuanced area.
Okay. I think that if you are not clear about whether or not it would be appropriate for me to do this stream with Steven, if I were also secretly his therapist, then you actually have no idea what you're talking about. So I will move on from
Incorrect.
this topic. Well, okay.
Hold
You
on,
think
hold on.
Yeah.
I read through the APA just before we got in here. And I'm
So did I.
telling you right now, you are incorrect in your statement.
I know.
You're
what you're
incorrect.
saying. Okay. You can have the last word. I think yeah, so I guess
If you could argue that your relationship with Stephen was not compromising your ability to treat him, your relationship may be deemed fully ethical.
if I could argue
if,
that,
however-
I would be the best arguer on the planet.
Not at all. Not necessarily. And this is
absolutely.
where we have to go, well, we'll have to see what the ethics board thinks. That's why I said, I think it's fair that you levied criticisms. I just think it's complex. And I
know.
don't know what the ethics board we don't even know if the ethics board will decide that he's been doing therapy, which I know you don't want to think about. But that isn't clear either, just so it's clear.
I've been thinking about it a lot, actually. Okay. So, yeah. Anyway, to answer your question, why did they write books about dual relationships? Also, my main problem with Dr. K and Byron was not the dual relationship, but calling it a dual relationship, you're already acknowledging that they had a therapeutic relationship, which doesn't make sense because
If therapy happened, then the ethics then would apply. And at that point, it might be a dual
Did
relationship.
therapy happen?
Well, it definitely would be.
Do you think therapy happened?
It sure looks like it, but I don't know what the ethics board is going to decide because in their stated contract,
I'm not asking what you think the
happening.
ethics board thinks. I'm saying, do you think therapy happened?
Again, I'll say it again.
I don't want to hear you say it again.
Contract,
I'm asking you to say a fucking new thing. Do you think therapy happened, yes or no, or you refuse to answer?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So the biggest violation that I saw and talked about in my award-winning documentary is that the therapeutic relationship, a doctor-patient relationship, was not clearly established and was not clearly non-established. So I know we're talking about dual relationships, and I agree there is a dual relationship, and I'm fine talking about it, but I just want to make it clear to chat that my biggest problem is that Dr. K wanted to have it both ways, just like the fucking two of you, where you get all of the benefit of being his hero and savior and therapist, but none of the downside to being somebody's therapist. The responsibility.
Just to be clear, just so everyone knows.
I would like to just finish my sentence, and then you can clarify whatever I messed up. You get all the benefit of being his hero, savior, therapist, and public and doctor, and none of the downsides of being his doctor, like liability, privacy, responsibility. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so why it probably wasn't therapy and might be ruled in that direction is because both people repeatedly said that it wasn't therapy. That was fully, verbally, and I think there's some level of contracts that are signed as well, made. Now, do I think, and just to be clear, he didn't want it both ways. When Byron again said something about like just my therapy, so this was I think like the third or fourth time that he said it. I think he only said it 3, so it must have been the third. The other times he was like, yeah, it's not therapy. And then he moved on. But in this one, he said, hold on. We had a big talk about this. You can't have it both ways. Either I'm just your friend or I'm your therapist, but I cannot be both. That is what Dr. K said.
Yes.
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 Do you remember Dr. K saying, I don't know if I'm your doctor or I'm your friend?
Yes, it led right into that conversation. He said, I don't know what this is. And so we need to clarify it. And it needs to be one or the other.
What session did he say that? I think that was the 5th session. Do you
That
agree?
was their 5th conversation. Yes.
Okay. 5th conversation, the doctor is saying to the other person, I don't know if I'm your doctor or if I'm your friend. This is a good example of why I think this is a flagrant violation of establishing the doctor-patient relationship. If you've talked to somebody for 10 hours already, you need to know if they're your patient or your friend. And if you don't know...
I agreed with you on. I said he waited way too long to have that DTR. I had agreed with that. I just don't think it's as big of a violation as you think it is, which is fine, by the way. I'm not even trying to convince you.
Can you describe a situation a state of a relationship between a doctor and a patient where after 10 hours of talking, that is a bigger violation of this rule, the failure to establish whether the relationship is a doctor-patient relationship. So you're allowed to not be somebody's doctor, and you're allowed to be somebody's doctor.
Not a doctor-patient relationship necessarily. That's the whole thing. So
can I
would have established it. No,
I want to finish my question.
Probably after not establishing after 10 hours would have been a problem.
I'm requesting.
However,
you gotta let her respond to your question. I feel like
wait, I didn't ask the question. She interrupted me while I was asking it.
Okay, it sounded like you asked a question, but maybe I just misheard. Okay.
Just to be clear, I've never actually appealed to Steven to like make space for me.
If you're playing a game, I'm gonna lose my shit right now.
No.
Oh yeah, you are.
Well,
maybe you missed the question because you're not fucking paying attention to what we're saying.
Okay, well, okay. Here's something I am positive of. You've talked for like 3 times the amount of time she has, so I'm giving her a little bit more leeway when it comes to speaking. But it sounded like there was a question there, but maybe there wasn't. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, here's my question.
It sounds like you're like asking a question, and then you like talk past a question, but you're not asking. It's like a rhetorical question. It's like, okay, go ahead.
Oh no, here's a real question.
Okay, go ahead.
You're allowed to be somebody's doctor. You're allowed to not be somebody's doctor. The rule is you're not allowed to sort of be somebody's doctor. After 5 sessions, Dr. K says to Byron, I don't know if I'm your doctor or if I'm your friend. Can you describe, if you're saying that is not a flagrant violation, can you describe what would be a more flagrant violation of this rule than that?
A more flagrant violation of this rule than that?
Yes.
Never, ever clarifying, ever. And then when he says, I don't know what this is, not making him give you a firm answer publicly on air about that. That would have been worse, right? If he led him to be like, I don't know if we're friends or not. And then nothing else happened after that. And I'm not talking about after. I'm
not talking about after. I'm saying at that moment in time, 10 hours into their relationship, regardless of what happened after.
It would also be worse if he never had a disclaimer. That would also be way worse.
Okay. At that moment in time, 10 hours of talking, Dr. K says, I don't know if you're my patient or you're my friend. or I don't know if I'm your friend or if I'm your doctor. Can you describe a state that the relationship could be in at that point that would be more of a violation of this rule? To me, that seems like the furthest you can be from being someone's doctor and not being someone's doctor is to be square in the middle, which is the worst place you can possibly be to follow this rule.
So wait, is your issue with the time? Because I already gave you a bunch of examples that would have made the ethics violation worse. Disclaimer,
No, my issue,
50 hours, that would have been way worse, right? 50 hours is even worse.
I said, can you answer this question? At 10 hours, what would be a worse place for them to be in? So here is, I'm your friend. Here is, I'm your doctor. And at 10 hours, Dr. K says, we're here. This is the flagrant violation. This is the baby rape zone. This is where we know that you have broken the rule. This is where he squarely puts himself after 10 hours of talking. And you're saying it's nuanced and we don't know how bad of a rule. Of course it is.
Because it would have been worse if it was 50 hours, and it would have been better if it was 2 hours, and it would have been even better if it was hour one.
Okay, at 10 hours, can you describe a worse location for Dr. K and Byron to be than right here?
Probably having sex with him would have made that also worse.
That's a different rule. This rule is about establishing the doctor-patient relationship. At 10 hours in, Dr. K says, we are directly between patient and friend.
He said, I am your doctor and I have been this whole time. That also would have been a real issue.
If he would have been prescribing medication, that could have been an issue. Or making more firm, formal diagnoses, that could have been a bigger issue. There's probably a lot of things he could have done that would have been worse.
I actually would argue that would be better, because if he was prescribing medication, he would be moving the needle toward doctor.
Can I pose an alternative situation where I don't know, because fuck.
Just to be clear, him prescribing
Excuse me, did you just interrupt
would
me?
have been worse, because he can't practice as a doctor if he hasn't established himself as a doctor.
True.
That would be way worse.
That would be a different rule that he's
way worse.
It wouldn't be worse in terms of this rule.
I don't know if seeking a clarification means that it's actually as bad as it is. So let's say, for instance, let's say that I was tutoring somebody for a college subject, 22-year-old girl. She comes to me for anything, because I have such a huge brain. And I'm tutoring her, and I'm like, okay. And she is like, maybe a little bit flirty at the beginning. It's like, okay, hey, listen, like, I'm just your tutor. I'm here to like teach you this. If we were doing math, having tons of fun, because math is so much fun, and after like 2 or 3 sessions, it was still like really flirty. And I take a second, like, okay, hold on. We need to figure out like what the relationship is here. Like, do you want to do like a flirty thing or whatever? Because if you do, like, I'm not going to tutor you anymore. Or do you want to continue tutoring? Because if so, this has to stop. I don't know if saying that I'm seeking clarification at that point necessarily condemns me to the worst offenses that I could be like committing by dancing across that line. It feels like seeking clarification, if anything, would be an argument that there is some attempt to establish an appropriate relationship there.
I think that I don't think there's a rule that says that you have to have clarity of relationship in order to tutor a 22-year-old.
No, hold on. Yes, there is. And if
what's the rule?
We could amend that analogy a million ways. Let's say I'm a grad student and I'm tutoring a student, if you really want to make it different. But it would be the exact same thing, right? Let's say that I'm a grad student and I'm tutoring somebody in a different department. I'm pretty sure schools probably have rules where upperclassmen can't sleep with underclassmen or something, right? But like, I think we can probably generally agree that it's probably not ethical that for a person that's in a position of teaching you and doing things, they probably shouldn't be fucking you at the same time. It could be weird for a number of reasons. Yeah. But like, I don't know if the evidence of, well, he was seeking clarification on the relationship, if that necessarily means that something necessarily was unethical up to that point. Because it could be that we could imagine that in Dr. K's mind, they were in a healthy, appropriate spot. But in Reckful's mind, Dr. K was thinking maybe he's not in a spot, and he was trying to bring Reckful in line with his thoughts. But
Dr. K said, I don't know if I'm your doctor or your friend. He didn't say.
Well, when Dr. K said that, I understand. I know. But when Dr. K said that, now I might be being too charitable to Dr. K, and if you want to say that, that's fine. Okay, maybe I am. But is it possible? Is there some possible world where when Dr. K was saying that, like, well, I don't know if I'm your friend or your doctor right now, was he saying that because he's confused, or was that a friendly way of trying to kind of prod Reckful and saying like, are you confused? Like when he's saying like, I don't know if I'm here. You think you think Dr. K? Yeah.
You can have a different interpretation of it. My interpretation is Dr. K was starting to realize that he was in serious trouble. because he had just told him that he was going to love him for 2 years to treat his BPD, and then quickly had a damage control conversation with him afterward privately where he said, hey, I can't do that, and I can't diagnose this isn't a real diagnosis. I can't love you for 2 years. I overstepped, blah, blah, blah. Although if they're just friends, I don't see how he overstepped or he overpromised or whatever. But he just seemed to me like he was trying to mitigate or undo some of the damage he was doing both to Byron and to himself. But even in that conversation, and it was why I think your charitable read doesn't work, he says, I don't know if I'm your doctor or your patient, and that never gets resolved. Reckful says, I hate the tension here. And Dr. K says, well, that's great. Let's do some breathing exercises and like feel the tension. And Reckful says, well, I need to get this resolved. I need to know if I'm your doctor or your patient, or if I'm your friend or your patient. And it never does. They never actually reach an agreement in that conversation. Dr. K, again, changes the subject to meditation.
Yeah. So now for what you're arguing here, I would say this is a different argument. It might be good. This sounds like a good argument. Like that's what I would focus on. So if you're saying that like, well, there was like the question itself, I don't think it's necessarily bad. But now if that question never gets resolved, well, now that actually seems pretty shitty if they don't actually resolve it and he diverts to something different. But that'd be a different argument.
So what I'm trying to say is my understanding of the therapy ethics, which I think is pretty superb, is that making the statement, I don't know if I am your doctor or if I am your friend, is, in terms of this one rule, which is a bedrock cardinal rule, is probably the worst statement you could possibly make. And the reason it is because the rule is complicated, because most rules, like in tutoring, the rule would be, I want to fuck you, I'm going to fuck you would probably be the worst statement you could make. Because the rule in tutoring is, it's like a line you can't cross. You shouldn't be sexual, or then you have to quit. But with being someone's doctor or being someone's friend, you can't be here. And when you say, I don't know if I'm your doctor or if I'm your friend, you are squarely putting yourself right in the exact worst spot you can possibly be. And that's why, in terms of that rule, I don't think it's nuanced at all. I think it'd be very clearly slam dunk is a utterly flagrant violation.
Okay, talk to Kyla.
Move on to, I found the APA, while you guys were chatting, I found the APA writing on dual relation. Do you want me to just read it out so like everyone is aware of where they stand broadly?
You can do whatever you goddamn want, Kyla.
Okay, sure. A psychologist refrains from entering into multiple relationship if the multiple relationship could be reasonably expected to impair the psychologist's objectivity, competence, or effectiveness in performing his or her functions as a psychologist, or otherwise risks exploitation or harm to the person with whom the professional relationship exists.
Okay. And you're saying that you don't know if it would reasonably impugn my ability to, or not impugn, fuck up my ability to be Steven's therapist if he is doing like a stream. I'm an orbiter of him as a streamer. He's doing relationship reviews of my fights with my girlfriend, and we're having a argument that he is the moderator of about therapy ethics. You don't know if that would impact my ability to be a good therapist to him.
So the writing here is intentionally loose. It's open to interpretation. And if you're going to make a claim that a dual relationship is a problem, you have to prove that it impaired all of these things. I am telling you.
Do you think it, or all or any?
You would need to prove that it impaired the psychologist or harmed the person.
Okay. Do you think that it is obvious that that would impair my ability to be Steven's psychologist?
No.
Okay. I think that is batshit insane, and that you, again, need to, I mean, maybe they'll tie this up in the last couple of years of school, but I think you are out of your fucking mind in terms of this one topic.
So, to be clear, it might not. It might also as well, right?
I can't imagine. I literally can't imagine, and I can imagine a lot. I can't imagine how that would work. That in a way that would benefit Steven.
Well, it doesn't have to benefit me, right? It just has to not be harmful. Right?
Not
Can't be
harm you. Yeah, yeah.
harmful.
I mean, how
compromise your
the
objectivity.
relationship. Yes, I'm saying the relationship would not be able to benefit him, which is necessary. The relationship has to be for the benefit of the patient, and if that would not.
For dual relationships specifically, it can't harm them and it can't compromise your objectivity, competence, or effectiveness.
Yes, and by compromising those things, it would render the therapy harmful to Stephen.
Right, and it probably would be a bad idea. Right? I would agree with you on that.
I'm not even saying
but
it
it could be
probably.
argued.
Oh,
So here's a question. Can I pose this? I'm just curious, right? Could it be the case? What if you were my counselor or therapist, but the reason why was because I had a lot of anxiety related to athletic performance? And in the scope of all of our therapy, that's generally what our conversations are about. Like, how do you deal with crowds cheering for you, booing at you? How do you practice the day of? Like, what do you do to alleviate those concerns? If we were having this conversation out publicly and for whatever reason, Kyla reported you to an ethics board to say that this was unethical, is it not possible that the ethics board would take a look at like, well, what kind of therapy do they do? Now, if the therapy was about like this topic in particular, maybe the ethics board would be like, okay, well, he shouldn't be talking about this publicly. This is fucked up. But if it was about like athletic performance, maybe they'd be like, well, this probably wouldn't impact his ability to deliver like good and concise therapy or beneficial therapy because it doesn't seem to be there's a lot of overlap. So can that be an example of how a therapy board would go over this and go like, in this case, it probably wouldn't be harmful, but in other cases, it might be.
I don't think so. I think that you have no, there's no world where it's appropriate for me to be talking to you about the pressure from your family, from the school, from your coach, from your friends, to be out on the field performing and how you deal with your emotions about that, and screaming at you that you're arrogant and gaslighting me on a live stream. There's
Okay,
no
wait, hold on,
fucking way
wait,
that
sure.
is appropriate.
Wait. Okay, hold on. And I'll ask Kyla, okay? Because I interpreted your question way differently initially. And I might disagree with her here, that's fine. But initially I thought your question was just like, could you have this type of conversation where I'm moderating or whatever, and it'd be okay. But now, if you're gonna say something like based on the behavior you've exhibited, then I would say, yeah, of course not. This would probably almost for sure be not good.
Yes.
That you're my therapist, you're screaming at me, and I'm screaming at you in a conversation.
I understand. No, it would be completely inappropriate. It's inappropriate to have a conversation where I think it's inappropriate for us to have a public conversation about pretty much anything. Especially therapy, especially a conversation that could become heated, and especially a conversation in which you have power over me.
Well, hold on. Now
if you're also his therapist, because there's a whole bunch of extra factors in there.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, now it seems like you. So me and Melina have gone to a therapist twice now for relationship stuff to make sure all of our relationship stuff is cool. If that lady ever wanted to come on and talk with both of us relating to like streamer relationships or public relationships, and you don't think that could ever happen in an ethical sense ever? No,
absolutely not. If she runs into you at a restaurant and says, "Hey, Steven, hey, Melina," that's a violation.
Okay.
I mean, especially if she's going to say, "These are my patients." Like, no, she can't do that.
Well, I could be wrong, but I think that violation is different and way more precise because she would be identifying you. Isn't that like an actual HIPAA violation at that point? I think that's a little different now.
It's a privacy thing. But
but that's like an ironclad.
Yes. It would create a dual relation. I think it would create an inappropriate dual relationship for her to be essentially promoting her business and coming on to your live stream and benefiting. So, like,
it would create a dual relationship.
Yeah,
I'm not disagreeing that a dual relationship might have not existed.
Unethical. I think it would be an unethical.
That's
clearly,
the question.
Yes.
Do you think?
And
here's a question, Max.
Yes.
I'm curious. Do you think there's any type of ethical dual relationship ever? And can you give an example of it?
Man, I've been talking to you about our dual relationship since the fucking third time we streamed.
We don't have a dual relationship at all because that would imply that one of us is a therapeutic.
No, we have a different dual relationship.
But we're talking about psych ethics.
We're
we
talking
need to identify a professional.
I'm trying to point out my
my
sensitivity to these things.
Well,
and the relevance, the personal relevance of this to our conversation.
Yeah, but I'm saying that like it's a bit different. Like there's going to be different guiding rules here.
Okay, my understanding is that the ethical dual relationships are the ones that are forced. Where if you're a counselor in a high school or a high school psychologist and then you all interact with the kid like in the lunchroom or in the hallway or something, that's a dual relationship, but it's like expected because you are working in the same place. Or in a small town where you the mechanic, the town mechanic there's only one, and you're the therapist, and so you end up in all kinds of dual relationships with different people in different situations where that kind of privacy and separation is not practical, but it should be avoided. And going onto your live stream is absolutely not anything close to that. Like there needs to be a really good. Oh, what? Yeah.
Well, no, you can finish your work. I was going to say I'm going to go to the restroom.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, there needs to be a really good reason for it. That's all.
Okay. All right. I'm going to use the restroom quick. Don't be too mean to each other. 1 sec.
Okay.
Okay, can I clarify? If the rules are so open and shut, why does the APA word it so ambiguously and open-endedly? Are they being snaky? Cheeky?
Thank you, Hippie Dip. Wait, okay, say that one more time. If the rules are so open and shut, why what?
Okay, so if the APA rules around dual relationships and whatnot were so open and shut, why do they word it so ambiguously and open-endedly and up for interpretation if it was just so clear? Are they snaky? Are they wanting to get practitioners fired?
No.
Like, what's going on?
My understanding is that they are wording it vaguely to cast a very wide net to stop most dual relationships.
But the wording inherently doesn't stop most dual relationships.
Well, I think it does, and that's
Because
part
there's
of
two pieces, harm and benefit. To prove it.
That's part of our disagreement. Is I think it does stop. I think the vagueness makes it catch more relationships, and you think it makes it catch less. I don't think that makes it more nuanced. I think it makes it more vague. Like, don't come anywhere near this.
So when they're using more ambiguous language, you think they're making it more open and shut. Just to be clear.
I think they're casting a broader net.
Okay.
By making
So you really don't seem to understand legal policy language then. Because if you're ambiguous in legal policy, it's so that it's allowed to be open for
Can you
interpretation.
stop with the ad homs?
That is not an ad hom. I'm telling you that you don't understand this.
Okay,
I've
I think you
multiple
don't
ethics
understand
pieces.
it. We can just sit
No.
here saying you don't understand and I don't understand.
No, but there's a difference because I'm going to explain to you what you're misunderstanding here. Okay,
well, I'm going to continue with the ad homs if you are then.
When we write
Makes me
ethics
tired,
pieces,
though.
for example, if we have a sheet, so when we do research, that would be another form of ethics psychology has to do. When we have come in, there's a whole bunch of disclaimers and a whole bunch of information so we can get informed consent, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, when we write an informed consent thing, there are some things that have to be very, very precise in their language because it is an open and shut door. It just is what it is. And then there are other things that are worded ambiguously because we leave it up to the ethics board to, like, if a situation arises, to kind of weigh, because we realize that some situations this might be okay, and in other situations it might not be, which is what dual relationships is worded as. Whereas sexual relations are not worded in that way.
The difference is that informed consent is clearly worded to carve out a place where you're allowed to be. And it's a small place. Dual relationships are vaguely worded to carve out a place you're not allowed to be. And with therapy
So you don't think any dual relationships are ethical?
No, I just said I think there are some that are ethical when they're necessary.
Okay, what is an example of an ethical dual relationship with a professional?
I just gave you one. If you're in a small town and your therapist, or say the doctor in town is also the foot doctor or something. There's only one doctor, and the doctor also is like the town on the select board, and you're also on the select board, but they're the only therapist and they're the only doctor. So there are situations where dual relationships are required by the situation, and then therefore are appropriate, not because they're ideal, but because that's just it is what it is.
Exactly.
Going on some
complex. That's why it's ambiguously stated.
I'm going to respond. Going on somebody's live stream is not necessary. There's no reason to do that. All it does is compromises the relationship so you can benefit yourself, which you're not allowed to do. To answer your previous question about vague wording and specific wording, your example you gave was that they use specific wording to describe informed consent. Informed consent is a little area where you're allowed to be, and therefore it's very specifically carved out. You are not to stray beyond this line. Dual relationships are described in vague wording as a catch-all of don't do any of this. This is all bad. It's all
No.
bad. If
No,
any part,
because when they
this
talk
is,
about
no,
it's
wait,
all
you just
bad,
asked me,
they're precise. No,
Hey,
but you're
hey,
wrong. You're
hey,
wrong. You're
That's
wrong.
fine if I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
Steven,
Okay? When they talk
Steven,
about
is
sexual
me being wrong?
relationships,
Is me
they're
being
very
wrong?
clear.
Steven, is me being wrong a reason for her to interrupt me?
So if you want to catch a whole
Does
bunch
that make
of things,
sense? Wait, does
and
that
there's
make
only
sense?
a small area where it's
For a
ethical,
debate,
you
for a
would
debate,
explain
does
what
it
that
make
is.
sense to interrupt the other person because they're wrong? Is that a rule?
That's what
in
happens in
debates?
debates, Max. That's
I
just
want
what
it to
happens
stop
in debates.
happening. I want it to
Okay,
stop
you
happening.
interrupt me, I interrupt you, you interrupt Destiny, Destiny
You know what?
interrupts
You know what I
It's
realized?
fine.
I was watching my review of the Dr. K stream, and I was watching Destiny watch it right before this.
Oh, no.
And somebody in his chat said, "What's wrong with MrGirl's voice?" Because it sounds kind of like rough. And I realized it's because I filmed that after talking to you. I think.
No, you
my
filmed it
voice-
before because you told me about it before. And I fucking
Well,
wish I had
his
seen that
voice was
before I
rough
talked
in
to you.
anticipation of talking
Then
to you.
who
It's
the
same
fuck was I?
point.
I was screaming. Maybe it was screaming at Shaylin. Anyway, I was fucking screaming at some woman, and that's why my voice is fucked up. To answer the question, I would like to stop fighting for air in this conversation. I would like.
You
to
are
have
not fighting for air. You've had almost double the amount of time I had, and I've been exceedingly patient, and I'm not going to stop cutting you off now because this is insane. It's
I am going to
because you are projecting so
If
hard.
you do not agree to stop cutting me off,
I will not agree to that.
then I must leave.
No, are we really doing this?
I need you to moderate. I don't want to argue
Okay,
about what
I'm
I
gonna
want to argue
scream-
about. I want to argue about the
Hold on,
topic.
you're not
not-
moderate, not moderate. Okay, I will strictly moderate, but
Yes.
that means neither of you are going to be cutting each other off. Both of
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Thank
you.
you.
Okay,
That works for me.
okay, go, Max.
Okay.
Hold on, Max. If you pose a question to her, you're not going to be allowed to talk past that question.
Absolutely.
Can we also have a no Gish
Yep,
Gallop
okay.
rule or something?
Yeah, so like if you're like, don't you think it would be bad to do this?
Yeah,
And then she
yeah.
starts answering, you keep going, I'm going to cut you
Totally,
off. But okay,
totally.
go for it. Go ahead, guys. Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What the fuck were we just talking about?
Well, I was making a claim. Do you want me to start? and make
No,
a claim?
I think you asked me something, and I was trying to answer it.
I was trying to ask you a question about ambiguous language. Why would they?
Oh yeah, you interrupted
so
me to
ambiguous?
say I was wrong. Right. I don't want you to interrupt me just because you think I'm wrong. So, yeah, it's ambiguous to make it easier to break the rule, not harder. That's what I think. Go ahead.
Okay. So, if you word things ambiguously, so you can cast a really wide net, but there's actually only a small subset of behaviors within dual relationships that it would be ethical and okay, why would they be ambiguous and vague and not just outline dual relationships are not appropriate, excluding these very specific situations? Why would they not do that? Which is what they do, by the way, in sexual conduct. They are very precise that it is almost always wrong, and here are a couple of situations where it might be okay. They're very clear. So why would they just like change their tune with dual relationships and be like, we'll just try a different tactic so that people don't know what the fuck we're talking about?
Because there are a lot of situations that necessitate a dual relationship, and so you need to take the context of the situation into your consideration. Byron and Dr. K is not one of the situations. That's a situation where he wanted a dual relationship. It wasn't necessary. There are no situations where it is necessary to have sex with your patient, and therefore you don't need to leave all of these openings for interpreting the context.
So you just agree with me, basically, that dual relationships are extremely nuanced, complex, and not like an open and shut case.
I believe there are some, I've said this a few times, there are some dual relationships where it's arguable. There are some where it's open and shut acceptable, and there's some where it's open and shut unacceptable. And Byron and Dr. K is one where it is open and shut unacceptable.
Wait, wouldn't the first
Can
two
I ask a
categories be
question?
the
Wait,
same
hold on.
thing?
Moderator is interjecting here. Can I just ask a question? If we're saying that there are some where it's acceptable and some where it's not acceptable, but you have to take into account greater context, isn't that by definition nuance? Isn't that what nuance means?
The nuance is a spectrum, like with rape. There are some rapes that are kind of acceptable, and some rapes that are super unacceptable, and some rapes where it's debatable. And some rapes where it's like my Tinder story, where it's obviously okay, very mildly debatable, but basically
Okay, here's the
it's
question. Is there
okay.
ever a case where it's okay for a psychiatrist, or we'll say a therapist, sorry, not a psychiatrist. Is there ever a relationship where it's okay for a psychiatrist to be having sex with somebody that they're actively providing counsel to?
No, but I would say sex it's intercourse would be the end of the spectrum. There are cases where it's appropriate for a patient to say, I had a sex dream about you. And it's appropriate for the therapist to say, do you want to talk about it? And there are also cases where it's inappropriate.
Okay.
What?
I'm saying I'm done interjecting, so you can respond, and then Kyle and you.
Okay. There's also a way, if the therapist is asking because I'm turned on and I want to hear about your sex dream about me, and I want to jack off to thinking about it later, then it's inappropriate to ask that question. If you think it's in the benefit of the patient, then it's appropriate to ask the question. It's also inappropriate to say I'm too uncomfortable with this, so I don't want to talk about it. Like that. That would be the unclear sexuality end of the spectrum, where you're in murky territory and you have to think about making sure you're saying what you're saying and doing what you're doing for the benefit of the patient. If the patient just had like a death in the family and wants a hug, some therapists think it's appropriate to hug the patient in certain situations. In extreme situations, probably not a super regular thing. But if you're hugging them and you're thinking like, wow, I finally get to press those big boobs against me. I've been waiting for somebody in your family to die so I can finally do this. Then it's not appropriate. So those would be more nuanced situations. Fucking the patient is clear. Yeah. Open and shut, and don't do that.
Right. Just like dual relationships is not open and shut. It's pretty unclear. That's why they're vague with their language.
So, okay, you keep saying the category, but I'm saying the category is a spectrum. Some dual relationships are open and shut wrong. Some are open and shut acceptable, and some are in the middle. So you can't just say dual relationships are nuanced. Like, yes, you have to use nuance to understand how appropriate
Just
something
like you
is.
don't have to use nuance to know sex. Sorry.
Sex is the end of a spectrum. Sexuality is inevitable. There's going to be some sexuality in all therapeutic relationships. The question is, how does it manifest? How does the therapist manage it? And what do you do with it? If you're fucking the patient, then you're on the far end, inappropriate end of the spectrum.
Right.
Okay.
Sex
so,
is always off limits. Dual relationships are almost never expressly always off limits.
Intercourse is off limits. Intercourse is part of the spectrum of sexuality. Sexuality is not off limits. Sexuality is actually inevitable and needs to be managed. Dual relationships, there are different ends of the spectrum. If you're going to have a dual relationship, there are some that are really appropriate and necessary, and some that are super unnecessary and inappropriate. Dr.
Is there
K,
a disagreement here? Are we disagreeing?
No, we're
yes,
agreeing.
we're well, it's not a disagreement. It's a reframing that Kyla does every time I finish talking, where she compares a specific thing to an entire category of things. And then I say, well, actually, you're comparing a specific thing to a category. So let me reframe it so we're comparing categories to categories and specific acts to specific acts. So we can compare sex to Dr. K and Byron's relationship. Those are both, in my view, are at the far end of an inappropriate spectrum of relationships. They're the inappropriate end of the spectrum. The categories are establishing a doctor-patient relationship, sexuality but in a relationship, and dual relationships. Those are the categories, but you keep comparing the category to the point on the spectrum. So it's not really a disagreement. It's just sort of a brain melting argument loop.
Yet the difference is that the point at which it's improper in sexual relationships is expressly verbatim outlined, and in dual relationships, it is never clearly outlined in
It is
the
not
ethics.
verbatim. No, there is no rule that says, is it appropriate?
Intercourse. There is a point at which intercourse.
Okay, wait. Okay, I think we're looping on a dumb.
Are you allowed
thought, 'cause I
to
think
lick
next
your
thing-
client's butt?
Wait, real quick.
It's not intercourse. No, let me answer this question. Are you allowed to lick your client's butt?
No.
But that's not intercourse. So why is that not allowed?
I was using your word, so I said intercourse because you seem to be like sex is sexuality. So I was just trying to get in your world, Max.
Okay. Are you allowed to look at your client's butt?
Probably, yeah, but it's probably not something I'd recommend.
Are you allowed
You're going to want to navigate
Are you
that.
allowed to leer? You're going to want to navigate it. Exactly. So sex is not
Yes,
explicit.
I've agreed with you on this.
Great.
I've agreed with you on this.
Yes, I'm not saying you disagree with me. I'm saying you are dishonestly reframing what we're talking about and what's happening in a brain melting tactic to make it so that we have no traction and can't talk about anything.
No.
So again, I will just say it one more time. Sexuality is the spectrum that we're talking about. Intercourse is at the far end. Butt licking is pretty close to it, maybe even past it. Leering at someone's butt, glancing at someone's butt, acknowledging someone's butt, whatever. And then it gets more murky and complicated. Your argument that I think you're trying to make that you won't say you want to make for some reason is that there are dual relationships. There are failure to establish doctor-patient relationships that are open and shut clearly unethical. You're just saying that the Dr. K. Byron relationship is not all the way there. You're saying it's more in the middle.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I feel like that's evident that I'm suggesting that.
Well, okay, so that I think needs to be what our argument turns to is if Dr. K and Byron are not in the most inappropriate of dual relationships, then I don't know what is.
Okay, so this is the line that you want to go down?
We can
Wait,
go down
okay,
whatever.
hold on. I'm a dumb fuck. Okay, can you tell me what? So, are we now arguing whether or not Dr. K and Reckful's relationship was clearly wrong, or are we just arguing about whether it was wrong at all? Because these are two technically different arguments.
Yeah.
So I would argue that...
Which one are we arguing about?
Maybe I'll just make my statement. I think Max feels it's clearly wrong, and I would
Okay,
say...
wait. Okay, and then I just want to be clear for my purposes, right? Do you both want to have that discussion right now?
I want an answer to Stephen's question.
Well, no, hold on. I'm not like quizzing you guys. I'm just asking I'm trying to figure out what you both want to talk about because
This is the intervention I was talking about, where I'm going to teach you to stand up to demon women. Okay? And
what?
when a woman will not agree what conversation you're even having, you need to put your foot down and say, no, you need to decide what conversation we're having before I move another fucking inch. You need to flop on the ground. You need to flop on the ground like a fucking dead fish and make them drag you and say, well, I'll get up and walk, but you're going to be, I'm like a dog. Kyla's walking me in the park. I'm like a husky. And I'm going to lie on my back and wave my paws in the air and howl until you fucking answer Stephen's question. Do you want to have a conversation about how unethical it was, whether it was unethical at all? What is this argument about?
So we've basically agreed, except for like you finagled with some points. So I've said we can move on to something else. What would you like to have a conversation
Wait,
about?
let her respond.
Do you want to go back?
No, wait. Okay. What, Kyla?
You're doing it again.
Wait, well,
You're saying we agreed, but not. Well, I want to move on, but I don't want to move on. But we're kind of talking about. But we're talking about a new thing. But we're kind of talking about the old thing.
Why are you I thought we said no interruptions. You cried for no interruptions. Stop interrupting.
Okay.
Kyla, answer the question. What would you like to talk about now?
Honestly, I'm pretty much like satisfied. I don't think Max is going to move on anything. I think he's clearly shown that he knows nothing about psychology, ethics. So it's like, if he wants to argue with me on more things, we can. I just like, there isn't anything else I want to talk about. I'm just like, yeah, you're incorrect about basically everything. I appreciate that you admitted that the hyperbole was probably unfair.
Take out the torchlight and watch the demon scatter.
What?
This is to be
Am I supposed to
expected.
respond to that, or?
So just so it's clear, Max.
I'm just saying when asked what are we actually talking about, you're like, well, I don't want to talk about it all anymore.
Well, no, because no. Point. Or sorry, go ahead.
Okay, let's be clear. There's been multiple times where I specifically have outlined which conversation we're having. So don't act like I'm just like a Weasley demon woman who's slipping away. But when I have actively driven you back to the point multiple times because you always finagle and move up in different levels of evaluation and then move on to like hypotheticals without actually centralizing ever. And I have done that regularly. I've, of course, obfuscated a little bit as well, right? I'm not perfect. But this idea that like I just don't want to have conversations.
I don't think you want to answer the question about what we're talking
insane.
about. I just don't think you want to decide what we're talking about.
Wait, the question wasn't what are we talking about? The question was what would you two like to talk about? What would you like not
okay,
not what is the it wasn't like a meta conversation.
That's all you're saying. You're saying you're done, Kyla?
I don't have anything else that I would like to talk about. If you would like to talk about something, you now may open that up. But I am satisfied.
Is that an acceptable answer?
Yeah.
She's not saying that she's unwilling or doesn't want to talk, but that the main purpose for why she's
I'm very
satisfied.
I'm familiar. I know what she's saying. I know exactly what she's saying.
Why don't you clarify it?
I like you, Kyla. I think that complicates this.
Is you're basically telling Stephen he has to engage like you do with other people, which is unfair. It basically tells Stephen everything that I had like come to value in you and your art kind of felt like a lie because it was like, well, if he's so like so off about this, where does this end?
Well, I don't think I'm off about what you think. I think I'm off in your view about. I don't think either of us disagree about what you think or what you've said. I'm genuinely horrified by every single thing you have said about Dr. K, start to finish. This conversation, our first conversation, our second conversation, everything I've ever heard you say. I am 100% horrified by you to my core. I think the thing we disagree about is whether that horror is warranted.
That's not what I'm really talking about. The one I'm talking about, like, mind reading me a little bit about like my feelings about being like selfish and greedy and stuff like that. And so I'm hearing you say I was just kind of venting and being actually more extreme so that people could maybe take what you were saying with a grain of salt. That's just not typically like the way I'm used to you engaging. Typically, the way I've learned to talk with you is like really try to just take Max's words for what they are because he's saying what he means, and that's like kind of his big thing. Was so I could have misread that, but that was my understanding of you. So when you said these things so clearly about me, I was like, what's going on here?
I felt and feel that you are defending some of the worst ethical breaches that lead to people dying. And I'm horrified by it. So that's not, again, I don't think I'm misreading you. I just think that you think my emotional reaction to that is disproportional.
So let me posit a second example. Good friend of the stream, Lauren Southern.
Yeah.
Okay. So I genuinely believe that she has defended and advocated for incredibly horrible things.
Yes.
Might even still to this day. I don't know. I
Seems
haven't
like it.
interrogated her on like vaccines and immigration yet, but possibly. But despite the fact that I think those things, I don't believe that they stem from this idea that she is intrinsically like an evil person. So we can have our screaming matches and shout at each other, but at the end of the day, and I could be wrong. Maybe she actually does feel this way, in which case she might. But at the end of the day, like, I hope that I'm not conveying to her, like, I just want you to know that I think you think these things because you're fucking evil, right? Even though we might have a huge disagreement on the views that she has. And I might even say, like, the shit that you are saying is literally evil. Like, what you're saying is evil. Like, today, so I would say, like, you're downplaying January 6th, your cover for Ted Cruz and all this shit is actually fucking so horrible. It's some of the worst things I've ever heard. But I don't think that you're evil as a person. I think that when Kyla is talking about her feelings about your feelings about her, she has no problem with any of the statements that you're making up to the point that you think they stem from her being either evil or stupid. Because I think you guys can have factual disagreements about Dr. K, and I'm speaking for her now because that's what I do. But I think that she might even say, it's okay that you think that my beliefs on it are like beyond fucked, that he's like super fucked, and that my thoughts on it are super wrong. But when you take one step further and go, you're not wrong, you're stupid, or you're not supporting a bad person or a bad actor, you are bad. I think that that's where the major incongruence happens of, well, I view myself this way, and I view you as an honest person that can read people well, and when you step into my bubble or my life and you give me a read that's incongruent with myself, well, what's going to happen? Am I going to agree with you that I actually am an evil, stupid person, or is it going to shatter my view of you, that I think you're actually not good at reading people and you're so stuck on this view of me that now I kind of don't know if you can read anybody at all. I think that's the issue.
Kyla, I don't think you're evil or stupid. I think that the message you are sending or that you have sent around this topic is destructive and damaging, and it really upsets me. But I don't think you're doing that because you are stupid or evil. And I don't think Lauren Southern is evil or stupid either.
So how come you keep calling me a red-faced demon woman?
Well, actually, I'm curious. I've never asked Kyla anything actually, because women are so scared of me. Do you think do you think my assessment is fair? That if Max's indictments of you ended at like the things that you supported, And he didn't go as far as to impugn you as a person. Like he said, like, man, you support some, what I would say is a pretty evil shit. So Dr. Case is some really fucked up shit. Some of the worst shit I've ever heard in my life. And I think you're super wrong on this. If you stopped there, is that like acceptable to you? Or do
That's
you feel
totally fine. I don't mind people meaning at me or anything.
Sure.
That's fine.
Even if, and I'm saying, even if these like were legitimate, not meme disagreements, but he really thinks that you're totally fucking wrong on this particular thing.
I mean, so wrong that I
think
genuinely think
it's
maybe
super
you
fair. I think he's just as wrong, right? Like that's
Sure,
totally
that's fine.
fine.
But it's the step further to the character judgments. And
it's more of a professional. I don't know if she's fit to practice.
Okay, well now we're back in the character.
And I think maybe she's not.
No.
And it's not like it's not that you're evil or stupid.
Well, but it's got to be one of the two if somebody's not fit to practice, right?
No.
Bad in some way.
No.
That's very much the wrong career and lording around my very wrong career.
Yeah. I think maybe it's the wrong career, or maybe you just have more to, you have to change somehow, but I don't think it's fundamental to you as a person. I think this might change. I don't know. But I'm not slapping a label on you as a person. When I call you a demon, it's kind of affectionate. Like when I'm calling Shaylin a demon, obviously I don't think Shaylin is actually a demon. But when I call her a demon, it is somewhat affectionate, right? Like I'm wearing a shirt that is a picture of her as a demon on it. And I said that this stream was partly going to be me having an intervention with Steven where I'm going to show him how to hold your ground when a woman is like shouting at you and guilt tripping you and calling you a man baby or whatever. And I said that because I felt like part of why Steven was calling me abusive in the other conversation is that he and all of his fans are extremely uncomfortable with the image of like a man not fixing it when a woman is crying. I just feel like people can't stand an impasse where I hold a boundary and say, no, this is where I am and I'm not moving on this. And then a woman starts crying and I'm like, well, no, I'm still holding this. I'm not going to change on this. This is what I want. This is how I feel. This is where I am. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to do anything. It's not, and it doesn't mean I don't care about you. It just means I don't have to drop everything I think and feel and believe and go fix it. And I feel like, yeah, so that's where the demon thing comes from. It's more just like something I've been talking and thinking a lot about how I think a lot of people, and maybe more of them are women, maybe not, I don't know, get a lot of power in interactions by not being clear about whether they're consenting to something or not, whether they consent to sex or not, or consent to a conversation or not, or what the conversation is about, or how they feel, or what their position is. It just feels like an inherent kind of power play that I don't think is on purpose, but it's a dynamic I've been thinking about a lot.
Right. You'd probably, though, agree that, well, maybe in your view, lots of women do that. That doesn't imply that every single woman does that at all times.
No. But
all
I think
women do that most of the time or all of the time?
It's more that I think men do it too, just in different ways slightly. But I'm not really making a statement. It's not a statement so much about women. It's more a statement about how, and in a way, I think this comes from men being sexist towards women. A lot of the reaction about my Shaylin video, and for me, it made me very angry on behalf of women, where it's like, if women are upset, we have to fix it. And we have to go silence them. If a woman's crying, she needs to be silenced and placated or whatever. And it seems like you're taking care of her, but really you're muzzling her. And it's never safe to just say, you know what, you're really mad, and that's okay. And you can be mad, and we can talk about why you're mad, and maybe something will change from that, or maybe it won't, but it's worth talking about, and it's worth you expressing it, and it's worth making space for that in this conversation. Or in this relationship. I feel like that is really rare. And usually when a woman is mad, she's either placated, silenced, or ignored, or convinced not to be mad. I think that's a big one. And so it's more of a dynamic that I know I'm bringing a lot to also, but it happened in our 4-hour stream. When I look back at it, it really feels familiar, that dynamic. So It's not. I'm not just calling you that because you're a woman. It's because it feels like a very, like, familiar, gendered dynamic that has happened between us before.
And I'm not even disregarding. I do think that actually that there's some of that dynamic that goes on in a lot of heterosexual relationships. Absolutely. I mean, it's something that I would say objectively, I had to like think about on my own and realize was happening in my relationship with Nick, who's my husband, by the way.
Yeah.
So I'm not disagreeing with that.
There's a bit of you have a, when I am screaming at you, you have a bit of a smirk.
Sometimes, usually if you say something that I find kind of funny or ridiculous, I will. But a lot of times when you're screaming at me, I'm pretty like flat affected.
Yes, but there was a mocking glee. Sometimes less this time, but some of this time, definitely in the 4-hour stream, that also is, making me bring up the dynamic.
I'm not sure I would agree with that. I found that conversation really stressful, not overly fun. This one actually has been a bit more fun to me because I think I've figured out how you like talk. Whereas in the first one, I wasn't fully sure how you spoke. And so there was a lot of stress in that. Like I was doing a lot of like trying to understand, like, how does Max speak specifically? So I didn't feel a lot of like glee or joy specifically.
Okay.
Going back to my original
I think you
point,
did.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to my original point, though, why I'm feeling concerned that you potentially mind read me incorrectly and then shared that is that you kept saying that I said that psych ethics are all about insurance. And I think you and I would both agree that if I was actually saying that, I kind of would be a bad person and I probably shouldn't be in the field. Issue is, I wasn't saying that.
I don't think you were literally saying that. I think you were saying they're partially about insurance at a time when it was incredibly inappropriate for you to say that. That makes it seem like you are sending the message that they're ultimately about insurance. I know you don't.
On a point there, do you see how that like those two things like they're very similar statements in terms of how they're worded, but they're worlds apart in terms of meaning?
Not in the context. And again, I'm saying that the context that we're talking about it in, like if a psychologist rapes a child, then it's not the time to say, well, yeah, but the rule against raping children, we have to remember, is it might be immoral, but it's also unethical. And the ethics rules are partly written for insurance purposes. Then
sure,
it's like, then it's like, well, no, I'm going to go fucking crazy.
There are ways to bring that up. And I'm making assumptions because I haven't seen the conversation, but just because I've talked to Kyla a bit, like I'm guessing that when she said that, and I'd need full context for it, but I'm guessing when she said that, she probably wasn't saying that because like I'm a big proponent of the free market and I think that we need to protect the profit motives of insurance companies. My guess is she probably said that to like reiterate how important these particular things are. Like they're so important, like even insurance companies have these things to protect themselves. Like it's a pretty important element.
She was saying,
do you think it was literally just like for the soul of like I want to protect the profit motives?
No. She was trying to, for the purpose of making an argument that Dr. K's conduct is not cut and dry, incredibly wrong. She was drawing a distinction between morality and ethics, and she was saying that even if you can prove that what he did is unethical, it may not necessarily be immoral, because part of the reason for these ethics rules is just for insurance purposes and liability. It's not all about protecting the patient, and it's not all about what's right. So even if he broke these rules, that doesn't mean what he's doing is wrong. And I find that message coming from someone, a mental health professional, abjectly horrifying and wrong. And in the context of this, I find it like really destructive and like bad.
Sure. I think I might actually be possibly inclined to agree with you, maybe.
Just to be clear, though, I said part of the reason for some of the ethics, right?
Yes.
I was extremely
absolutely
reticent about this.
I know.
But you took that to say all of psych ethics is in service to insurance companies.
Yes. I know you didn't literally say that, but in the context of talking about a incredibly horrific breach that possibly led to a horrific outcome.
It was inappropriate for her to voice that
Yes.
fact, even if everything was true. Sure,
Yes.
which is fine, which is probably fair. Maybe I'd have to hear the conversation. But again, I'm not here to argue over whether she should or shouldn't have said it. I'm just saying that the model of her character that you're putting forth can be dramatically different depending on how that's phrased. Right.
Yes.
So, like, for instance, if somebody comes up to me, because I talk about rape and all that shit on Twitter a lot, right? If somebody comes up to me and they're like, I feel like, listen, Destiny, like, you're making a decent point, but like, maybe in some of these, now is not the time to say this particular thing. Like, it feels a little weird, feels a little victim blamey. It's like, I might disagree, but like, I'm gonna have a far less vitriolic reaction to that than if somebody comes up like, oh, what's up, Destiny? I see you're being pro rape again, right? Even though they're like kind of sort of similar-ish, they're worlds apart in terms of meaning, I think is the issue.
Yeah, I think in one instance the person is just unloading on you, and the other they're trying to collaborate with you.
Maybe I'm avoiding the actor and I'm looking at the recipient though, right?
Okay.
Because in this case, Kyla is the recipient.
Yes.
Right? So I don't care necessarily about the intentionality of the person giving the initial criticism, but it's more just like, how do you think the other person is going to take it? And I think that's the thing that we kind of have to consider with our actions, right? Because regardless of what we intend,
Well,
people can take things.
Yeah, I guess I just feel like what you said is so wrong, and what you're still saying is so wrong, that I'm weighing.
Actually, we agree. I think, well, maybe she doesn't. But like, assuming that your quotes are correct, that's fine. I'm just saying that there are two ways you could present that, and in one, you're literally saying like ontologically, like the property of this person is evil. They are an evil person.
No,
but
I'm
in
saying
another
what
way,
you're
you're saying that like
saying,
their messaging is like so grossly irresponsible that it almost sounds like you're providing cover for Dr. K here by engaging in this type of conversation, like after everything that's happened.
Yeah, I'm saying it's a feeling of like I have to stop you when you're doing that.
But I'm just saying these are two. Do you recognize that like these are going to be interpreted, these two messages, very, 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 very differently?
By Kyla?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think that's the only thing that I'm, as long as you understand it. And you can even say at the end of the day also, I'm not saying you have to, you can say like, well, fuck it. I hope she does interpret it that way. Fuck her. Which is fine if you do. But you just have to be aware of it, right?
Yeah, but I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm disregarding how you're going to interpret it, honestly, which maybe is part of the problem that you have with it, but I don't care. I mean, I care after the fact, but as I'm making the decision, I'm like, this needs to be stated in the strongest, most unequivocal terms that I can state it, that I fully condemn your statements about Dr.
That's
K.
not the issue, right? The issue is what you're telling people I said.
I know. I don't think we're going to agree on that. For the record, I, Max Carson, hereby acknowledge that I was being hyperbolic and that Kyla did not literally state that therapists don't care if clients kill themselves, or that therapy ethics are about solely, ultimately, or even mostly liability purposes. And she also did not state that all therapy ethics rules that even every therapy ethics rule is somewhat about insurance purposes.
Nor did I imply it.
Well, the implication there is what you guys are fighting over, right?
Yeah, the implication is you implied all that shit. I think you implied all that shit, but you didn't say it.
You previously told me that I did not imply these things. This is your read of what I felt afterwards. I clarified with this with you in DMs because I went through all of our video to be like, is there any way I did imply this? That would be bad. I went through it.
The way that you implied it is the same way that if somebody says, well, what was George Floyd wearing? And it's not like, well, yeah, maybe that's a factor in what happened to him. But it's in most conversations about what happened, bringing it up by itself carries a lot of really negative, weird implications. And that is what I'm reacting to. I'm not saying that you were thinking this. I'm saying that you were sending a message to other people that are going to hear it that way. And the message that suicidal people or people who are severely depressed, who are afraid to go to therapy because they feel that the therapist is just going to take advantage of them and take their money and run out the clock and not care if they die, the message that you're sending to those people is that they're right. And you're saying it in the worst way. You're not even saying it like, yeah, a lot of therapists are shitty and that can happen. You're saying like that's by design.
Or she's not saying
you know,
it.
You're not saying it,
like
but that's what they're going to
implying it.
hear. Yes, you're not.
Sure.
I know you're not saying it. I know you're not thinking it. I know you're not meaning to imply it or implying that you think it. I'm just saying that's what they're going to hear. And so I'm trying to knock down that message coming from you. I'm
telling you that is a bad faith interpretation, even implication of anything that I have said. I was very careful about all of the concerns that I have for the client.
About how people are going to hear what you say.
And no sane person would make that assumption about my conversation.
Sane people. I'm talking about people who are going to kill themselves if they don't get help. And those are not sane people. Those are fucked up, crazy, paranoid people. Those are the people that I'm talking to. And those are the people that I'm concerned are going to hear what you said and think, well, you know, if the therapist, this fucking greedy charlatan
Careful.
Squeezes the fucking last drop of life out of this person in front of all of us, and then you're up there saying, well, maybe it wasn't that bad. That's
In
the
fact,
message.
my whole position with insurance companies is that sometimes they limit practitioners due to liability that actually limits care. That was precisely I'm reading it verbatim now from a timestamp.
I just don't think it's an appropriate time to bring that up.
Okay, I don't know if we're going to make any more progress on
I don't think so.
this particular topic. Is there anything else that either of you would like to talk about? I am super chill and totally open to chatting.
Available. I'm emotionally available. I'm
yep,
logistically available.
Yep, physically available and everything. I'm not trying to weasel out of a conversation or get at anything at all. So if anybody has a feeling or a thing or a word or a question or a statement or a desire to feel heard or seen or understood.
I feel heard and seen.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have the feeling from you that sometimes we're getting out of these conversations. You feel like I've pulled a fast one on you somehow. So before you go to your stream and tomorrow or the day after, say that. Is there anything right now that you feel like, oh, I feel like you did this or that in a conversation? Not because I'm trying to head off your criticism, but I don't want you to feel like tomorrow,
there wasn't
I wish I would have brought
for it. Yeah.
Yeah, or like I wish I would have said this, but like I feel like it was like I kind of got pushed out of the convo or something like that.
I think I've only said that once, just this last time.
Well, I don't want you to say it twice. So.
Okay. I don't think it's a fast one, but your stance is, I'm wrong about you. You can prove that you're right about me, and if we talk through it, I would have to agree with you. And I feel like when I say something more conciliatory, like, well, you know, we both have just different ways of looking at things, and you're like, yeah, but your way, I could prove to you is wrong if you were patient enough to sit through it. Which I don't think is a fast one, but you did say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's ever like an example, or right now, if you can think of an example of a behavior or a thought or a thing or a feeling.
No, I'm not trying to prove it to you. I'm just saying that these are my thoughts about you. They're available for your perusal or probing if and when you want to discuss them. And
I mean, I'll discuss any of these things. You can message me tomorrow or the day after, or we can do it
and
now,
I will
do it in a week or whatever. You can be like, oh, hey, like let's chat about this thing. I'm like, yeah, sure.
And I'll reach out more.
Okay. Gotcha.
Because I think you're right that I'm being guarded.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, if that's the case, if everyone's just going to sit here and silently stare at each other, then I think we have come to a natural conclusion. This conversation. It's been one. It's been a conversation, guys.
It has.
I suppose we will chat again at some point. And yeah, are we good? Anything else? We're all okay?
Kyla?
Okay, as in like, what are you wanting there? Or do you
Okay,
just
as
want
in
me to
there's
say?
nothing further that you have to say or want to bring to the conversation table or anything like that?
No, I think what I've said is clear. I guess I'll end by saying, and this is just like where I'm feeling. I'm really disappointed in Max. I think I thought you were one way based on your art because I was like a huge fan of your art. I think I've realized you're not that at all. Maybe it changed. I don't know. And that makes me sad because I thought it was really cool and I thought you were doing something really unique. But I think I was wrong. So that sucks.
Well, this is why they say never meet your heroes, I guess.
Truly.
Okay, well, listen, I would ask Max if you want to respond, but I think that's like an invitation to argue. I think we have...
No, I'll quote Ripley. I'm happy to disappoint you.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, well, listen, I love you both.
I love you too.
Yeah, it's been fun. And I will probably catch you guys in another conversation sometime soon. Yeah?
See you on the next Streamerino.
Yeah. Okay, good night. Bye.
Bye.